Everyone thought an inventory was a menu. Mine had a floor. My name is Ethan, and on the day the world cracked open, I got the weakest ability anyone had ever seen. That was what they said anyway. The sky above Phoenix split like glass at exactly noon. Black towers rose from parking lots. Blue gates appeared in apartment hallways. Every phone in the city lit up with the same glowing message, and every human being gained a status screen, a level, and 10 inventory slots. People screamed for about 6 minutes. Then they started bragging. One man pulled a flaming axe from empty air. A woman jumped 3 stories and landed without bending her knees. Someone on the freeway fired a beam through a monster the size of a bus. The whole city became a giant audition for the role of strongest person alive. I stood in the stockroom of a discount grocery store and stared at my own ability, inventory expansion. No fire, no lightning, no super strength, just 10 slots, the same 10 slots everyone already had, plus a tiny note saying my inventory could be entered under certain conditions. The store manager laughed so hard, he dropped a box of cereal. He had awakened a skill that coated his fists in stone. Other survivors gathered around him because stone fists looked useful when 3-legged lizards were already chewing through the front doors. I tried to explain that my inventory description was unusual, but nobody cared. The manager pointed at the shelves and told me to be useful by carrying canned beans. So I touched a can. A pale rectangle appeared in the air. It looked like a glowing door no wider than my hand. I pushed the can through, and it vanished into slot 1. Normal. Then I wondered what would happen if I pushed my arm in after it. My fingers passed through cold air, my wrist followed, then my elbow. The glowing rectangle stretched. I leaned forward, expecting resistance. Instead, I fell through. I landed face first on a concrete floor under white lights that had no visible ceiling. The can of beans sat 3 feet away. Behind it stood 10 metal shelves, each one empty except for the first shelf holding the can. There were no walls. The floor continued into darkness, farther than I could see. I turned around and found the glowing doorway hanging in midair. Through it, I could see the stockroom and the manager still laughing at the place where I had disappeared. That was the moment I stopped feeling embarrassed. Everyone else had 10 boxes in a menu. I had real estate. A lizard smashed through the stockroom door before I could celebrate. It lunged at the manager, bit through his stone-coated arm, and threw him into a stack of bottled water. People ran. The monster whipped its tail through 2 shelves and covered the floor in soup cans. I could have stepped back out and tried to help. Instead, I grabbed the edge of my glowing doorway and pulled. The opening widened like soft rubber. The lizard charged straight at me. I waited until its head crossed the threshold, then jumped sideways and yanked the doorway across its body. For one impossible second, the creature was halfway inside my inventory and halfway inside the stockroom. Its claws tore at the floor. Its tail flattened a display of paper towels. I wrapped both arms around a shelf support, planted my shoes, and pulled with everything I had. The doorway expanded over the monster's shoulders, then its hips. Then the whole beast dropped into my warehouse. The opening snapped shut behind it. The lizard spun toward me with foam flying from its jaws. I ran. That first chase taught me 3 important facts. First, living things could enter my inventory. Second, time moved differently inside. The lizard's claws struck the floor in slow, heavy motions, as if it were running underwater. I was slowed too, but not nearly as much. The inventory recognized me as its owner. 1 second outside felt like almost a minute inside, and I moved at close to normal speed. Third, objects inside could be moved through thought. I discovered that by panic. The lizard opened its mouth behind me. I threw up both hands and wished the metal shelves would block it. All 10 shelves shot across the floor like missiles. They slammed into the beast from every direction. 1 clipped its legs, 2 folded around its ribs. The remaining shelves stacked on top of it until only the tip of its tail remained visible. I stared at the pile, then I looked at my hands. Then I laughed. Outside, less than 2 seconds had passed. I opened the doorway above the stockroom floor and stepped through. The survivors were still turning their heads toward the place where the lizard had vanished. The manager sat against the bottled water, staring at his bleeding arm. I picked up a can of beans and tossed it from one hand to the other. Nobody laughed this time. That should have been enough to make them take me seriously. It was not. People understood fireballs. They understood giant swords. They did not understand a skinny guy who vanished into a glowing rectangle and came back holding groceries. By sunset, the store had become a crowded shelter, and I was still treated like a delivery worker. That was fine. While the strong people argued about who would guard the doors, I emptied the building. I stored canned food, water tanks, batteries, medicine, camping gear, tools, propane canisters, lumber, refrigerators, and every shopping cart I could find. Normal players could place 1 type of item in each slot. A stack of identical cans counted as one slot, but a different flavor used another. They spent hours organizing menus. My shelves did not care. If an object fit through the door, I could put it inside. And if it did not fit, I could make the door bigger. By midnight, my 10 shelves had become 10 islands in a sea of stolen supplies. I lined up carts into rows, built walls from drink crates, and used extension cords to connect portable lights. Inventory's white glow seemed endless, but equipment still worked normally. A battery-powered fan turned. A radio caught no signal, yet its clock ran. Water poured. Fire burned. I tested everything. Candle inside burned 60 times slower compared with the outside world. Ice barely melted. Fresh food would last for months. Injuries did not heal faster, because my body followed my own time, but anything not linked to me crawled through seconds. The trapped lizard remained under the shelves, breathing in slow rage. I built a cage around it using shopping carts and zip ties. It looked ridiculous. It also worked. At dawn, the first monster wave hit. The city sirens never sounded. The monsters were the sirens. Hundreds of pale creatures poured from a gate at the end of the street. They looked like hairless wolves with too many elbows. Survivors in the grocery store formed a line behind overturned freezers. The manager stood in front, one arm bandaged, still trying to act like the strongest person there. He announced that anyone without a combat skill should hide in the stockroom. Everyone looked at me. I smiled and walked into my inventory. Then I moved the door. That was another thing normal inventories could not do. My opening did not have to stay attached to my hand. I could place it anywhere I could see within 30 feet. With concentration, I could rotate it, tilt it, and slide it through the air. I opened a horizontal doorway above the front entrance. Then I emptied an entire aisle of cooking oil onto the street. Hundreds of bottles fell from the sky, struck the pavement, and burst beneath the charging monsters. Their claws lost traction. The front ranks crashed. The creatures behind them piled on top. Before anyone could ask where the oil came from, I opened a second doorway. This one released every bag of flour in the store. White powder filled the air. Then I rolled a lit propane heater through the opening and closed it. The explosion removed the front wall. It also removed most of the first monster wave. Survivors stared through a cloud of dust at the crater where the parking lot used to be. The manager slowly lowered his stone fist. I stepped from a doorway near the ceiling, landed on a stack of cereal boxes, and told everyone I had accidentally dropped something. The joke would have sounded cooler if the cereal boxes had not collapsed under me. I fell into a display of crackers. People laughed again, but it was a different kind of laugh. Then the second half of the wave came around the building. I had no oil left outside. I had no explosive skill. My mana bar was almost empty from opening large doors, so I used the lizard. I returned to the warehouse, floated the cage above me, and pulled the shelves apart. The creature had spent hours of inventory time trying to escape. It was furious, hungry, and very confused. I opened a doorway facing the street. Then I dropped the cage. The lizard hit the pavement in the middle of the wolf pack. The cage shattered. The lizard saw dozens of smaller monsters surrounding it and made the reasonable choice to attack everything. The fight was savage. Survivors watched from the broken store while my first captured monster turned the wave into lunch. Whenever the lizard tried to move toward us, I opened a portal beside its head and smacked it with a frozen turkey. By the fourth turkey, it learned to stay on the other side of the street. That was how I won my first monster battle using cooking oil, flour, a heater, a shopping cart cage, and poultry. My level jumped from 1 to 7. My skill changed. The 10 shelves remained, but a second line appeared beneath the first. Warehouse Authority, Basic. I could now create 3 inventory openings at once. I could move objects inside with greater force. And I could designate one area as a safe zone where stored creatures could not enter. The others gained levels too, yet my victory did not make me their leader. It made them nervous. People fear abilities they cannot measure. The manager claimed the explosion had been reckless. A woman with a spear said trapping monsters was disgusting. Someone accused me of taking too much food into my private storage. That last complaint was fair. I had taken all the pudding cups. But while they argued, I noticed the gate at the end of the street pulsing again. Bigger shadows moved behind it. The first wave had only been the smell of dinner. The real pack was coming. The manager decided the store could hold. I looked at the missing front wall, the burning parking lot, and the lizard chewing on a monster leg. Then I looked at the entire shelter. An idea hit me so hard I forgot to be scared. If I could store a can, a shelf, and a living monster, what exactly counted as an object? I opened my largest doorway against the floor. The glowing rectangle spread beneath a checkout counter. I widened it until it surrounded the entire structure, then pulled upward with my mind. The counter dropped into my warehouse hole. The cash register, conveyor belt, gum display, and confused cashier all went with it. The cashier landed safely on a mattress. I moved under the opening. Everyone froze. I stared at the empty patch of tile, then I looked at the building's support columns. My grin must have been terrifying because the manager backed away. I did not store the whole grocery store that day. I was level 7, not a god, but I stored enough of it to change everything. Shelving units vanished by the row. Refrigeration cases slid into the warehouse. Water pipes came through after I shut the valves. Doors, windows, generators, solar panels from the roof, and half the loading dock followed. I worked while the next wave grew closer. My mana emptied, refilled with potions, and emptied again. Inside the warehouse, hours passed. I arranged the stolen sections into a real base. Refrigerators formed a cold storage wall. Pallets became towers. I used the checkout counters as workbenches. The safe zone became a square surrounded by stacked lumber and concrete barriers. I ran cables from the generator to lights and fans. I built sleeping areas with mattresses. I even placed the bakery oven near the front. By the time I stepped outside, only 12 minutes had passed. The store looked like a skeleton. The approaching monsters sounded like thunder. I opened a doorway large enough for people to walk through and told everyone to enter. Nobody moved. The manager asked why they should trust me. A claw the size of a motorcycle punched through the far wall. That settled the debate. Dozens of people ran into my inventory. I guided them toward the safe zone while I remained outside. The manager entered last, still glaring as if surviving my way was an insult. Then the building collapsed. I stepped backward through the doorway, one heartbeat before the ceiling came down. Inside my warehouse, the sound became a distant boom. Through the open portal, we watched a mountain of muscle and antlers crush what remained of the grocery store. Behind it came hundreds of wolves, lizards, and things that moved like spiders made from bone. Everyone thought we were trapped. I closed the door. The view vanished. Silence filled the warehouse. The monsters had no way in unless I opened one. For the first time since the sky broke, we were safe. People began cheering. I did not. I was staring at my ability screen. More than 60 living people had entered my inventory willingly. The warehouse recognized them as guests. Their movement was normal inside the safe zone, and the time difference adjusted around them. The more guests I protected, the faster my mana recovered. My skill was not just storage, it was shelter, and shelter could become a fortress. The giant outside stomped across the ruins. Each step shook dust from the portal frame even though the portal was closed. I could have waited. Food would last. Time inside favored us. In one outside hour, we could rest for days. But waiting would not earn levels, and levels were the only reason I could open a doorway large enough to save everyone. So I started building a weapon. The survivors expected a plan involving spears or fire. I asked them to bring me every shopping cart, freezer door, steel cable, propane tank, and bag of concrete mix in the warehouse. Their faces told me they thought I had lost my mind. They were right. I had lost the part that believed ordinary ideas were useful anymore. Inside the slowed warehouse, we worked for nearly 6 hours while only minutes passed outside. I turned shopping carts into a giant frame. Freezer doors became fins. Concrete mix and scrap metal filled the center. Propane tanks ringed the rear. Steel cables held the whole ugly object together. It looked like a missile designed by a supermarket. I named it the Receipt. The manager refused to help until he saw me drag the trapped lizard toward the construction. Then he asked what the monster was for. I told him every missile needed guidance. I built a small cage at the front and stuffed the lizard inside with its head facing forward. It tried to bite me. I fed it the last frozen turkey and promised it a bigger meal. The giant outside had antlers spreading wider than the street. Its mouth opened vertically through its chest. It was chewing through the ruins, hunting for us. I opened 3 portals. The first appeared high above the giant. The second appeared behind the Receipt. The third appeared beneath a stack of propane tanks. I moved the tanks through the second portal and slammed them into the rear of the missile. The impact pushed the entire machine forward. At the same moment, I released the front cage. The lizard saw the giant through the portal and charged. The Receipt followed. It shot out of the sky like a steel meteor with a screaming monster strapped to the nose. The giant looked up. That was its final mistake. Lizard hit between its antlers. The shopping cart frame wrapped around its skull. Freezer door fins spun. Concrete and scrap punched downward with enough force to drive the giant's head into the pavement. Then I dropped the propane tanks from the third portal. The explosion turned the street orange. When the smoke cleared, the giant was still standing. Its antlers were gone. Half its face was missing. The lizard dangled from one ear, somehow alive and even angrier than before. The survivors groaned. I smiled. The Receipt had never been the weapon. It was the marker. During construction, I had stacked every heavy object in the warehouse above one marked section of floor: refrigerators, concrete barriers, engines, pallets of canned food I did not like, the entire bakery oven. I opened a horizontal portal over the giant, wider than the street. Then I removed the floor beneath the stack. Gravity did the rest. 30 tons of civilization fell from empty air. The giant disappeared under an avalanche of appliances, steel, and expired vegetables. The bakery oven landed last. Its door popped open on impact, and a tray of frozen dinner rolls bounced across the rubble. My level jumped to 13. The warehouse lights flickered. Far in the darkness beyond my original shelves, new lights turned on one by one. Rows of empty floor appeared. Not 10 shelves anymore, 10,000. And at the far edge of the illuminated space, an enormous door rose from the ground. It was made of black metal, taller than a building, with no handle and no keyhole. I had no idea what waited behind it, but before I could investigate, something moved beneath the pile outside. A hand burst from the rubble, not the giant's hand, a human hand. A tall man stepped from under 30 tons of debris without a scratch. He wore a long gray coat, no armor, and a thin smile. Black threads ran from his fingers into the bodies of the dead monsters. The corpses stood up around him. The lizard tore itself free from the wreckage and charged. The man raised one finger. Every dead creature turned toward my portal at once. Then he looked directly through the opening and met my eyes. I did not know his name yet. I only knew two things. He could control monsters. And he had just seen the entrance to my world. The man's name was Damien. I learned that 3 seconds later, when he introduced himself by throwing a dead wolf through my portal. I closed the opening before it crossed completely. The glowing edge sliced shut around the corpse, but instead of cutting it in half, the inventory rejected the incomplete body and spat it back outside. That answered a question I had not wanted to test. Living or dead, a creature had to pass through whole. Damien smiled as though he had learned the same lesson. Then every corpse around him rushed the place where my doorway had been. Survivors panicked even though the portal was closed. The manager shouted that Damien had seen us and would somehow break in. Other people demanded that I move the warehouse, as if I had built it on wheels. I ignored them and opened a portal the size of a coin near the ceiling outside. Through it, I watched Damien walk around the rubble. The black threads from his fingers connected to the dead monsters like puppet strings. He could not see the tiny portal, but one of the corpse wolves sniffed the air and turned toward it. I closed it. That was bad. Damien could not enter without my permission, but his creatures could sense spatial openings. If I tried to leave nearby, he would know. Everyone expected me to wait until he got bored. I had never seen a man stand beneath falling refrigerators, so I assumed boredom was not one of his weaknesses. I needed distance. Fortunately, I had an entire loading dock in storage. I opened a portal against the warehouse floor and released the loading dock ramp downward. The concrete slab fell through darkness and emerged 2 blocks away, where I had placed the exit using a brief coin-sized view. The slab crashed into an empty intersection. That confirmed another rule. I could place an opening anywhere I had seen recently, even if I could no longer see it, as long as it was within my range. My range was 30 feet. The intersection was 2 blocks away. But the loading dock had been more than a simple object. It had a painted yellow line running along its edge. When part of that line passed through the first portal, I could open the second portal relative to the part already outside, like extending a tunnel one section at a time. I had accidentally invented portal crawling. I grabbed a roll of bright caution tape. One end remained inside my inventory. I pushed the other end through a tiny opening 30 feet from Damien, dragged it across the ground, opened a new portal 30 feet farther, and repeated. Each segment gave me a new point of reference. The tape slithered through ruined streets, while Damien's monsters searched the wrong block. By the time he realized the yellow line was moving, I had reached the freeway. I opened a human-sized door beneath an abandoned bus, stepped out, and pulled the entire bus into my inventory. Then I opened another door half a mile away, using the bus's long shadow as my visible anchor. The logic made no sense. The skill accepted it anyway. I moved the survivors across the city without any of them taking a step outside. I stole vehicles as stepping stones, dropped them farther down the road, and used their windows to see new locations. We traveled through my warehouse while the outside world advanced only minutes. Damien followed. He sent winged corpses above the streets. Their eyes glowed black whenever I opened a portal. I would see one circling in the distance, close the door, and change direction. It became a chase between a monster puppeteer and a man carrying a grocery store through another dimension. I was winning until the manager tried to take control. He had spent the entire escape telling everyone that my power was unreliable. When I stopped to recover mana, he gathered a group near the safe zone and demanded that I open a portal so they could leave. I warned him Damien was still hunting us. He called me paranoid. Then he punched open the emergency exit door I had stored from the grocery store. It was not connected to the outside, obviously. It opened into the warehouse darkness and nearly fell on him because I had not bolted it to anything. That should have ended the argument. Instead, he grabbed my shoulder with his stone-coated hand and tried to force me to create an exit. I looked at his fist. I looked at the safe zone boundary. Then I moved the boundary 2 feet to the left. Warehouse recognized him as hostile the instant he attacked me. The floor beneath him tilted, not physically. My authority simply decided that down was now sideways for one unwanted guest. He fell across the concrete and slid 50 yards into a stack of toilet paper. Nobody challenged me after that. I did not throw him out. I was angry, not stupid. His ability was useful and Damien was outside, but I did change the safe zone rules. Guests who attacked another guest lost access to normal time. The manager spent the next 10 minutes moving like a statue while everyone else walked around him. It was petty. It was also hilarious. Our escape ended at an aircraft repair hangar on the edge of the city. The building had been turned into a survivor base. Floodlights covered the runway. Metal barriers blocked the roads. People with combat abilities watched from scaffolds while others repaired vehicles below. The person in charge was Owen. He was an older man with silver hair, a pilot's headset around his neck, and the calm expression of someone who had already watched the world end twice and found the second version less impressive. His ability let him understand any machine he touched, not control it, not magically repair it. He simply knew what every part did and how badly someone had ruined it. And I opened a portal in the middle of his hangar and released 60 frightened survivors, 2 refrigerators, and 1 extremely irritated monster lizard. Owen did not reach for a weapon. He looked at the lizard, looked at me, and asked why it had a shopping cart wrapped around its neck. I told him it was a long story. He said the cart's left wheel was misaligned. That was how we became allies. The hangar held more than 200 people. Most were exhausted, injured, or trying to turn civilian machines into weapons. A crop-dusting plane had metal spikes welded beneath its wings. A fire truck carried a rotating cannon made from pipes. Someone had attached chainsaws to a forklift. I respected the creativity. I did not respect the welding. Owen showed me a map. Monster gates covered the city, but the creatures were moving in patterns. Something near the downtown stadium was pulling them together. Every hour, more packs joined the same path. If the mass reached the hangar, the base would be crushed. Damien was not causing that movement. Owen had tracked it before Damien appeared. The monsters were migrating toward a nest. That meant the hangar had 2 problems. A giant horde was coming from the east. A man who controlled dead monsters was following me from the west. Owen wanted to evacuate by air. Half the planes were broken. The other half had no fuel. I told him I had fuel. Then I opened my warehouse and rolled out an entire gas station pump. Owen stared at it. I explained that I had passed one during the escape and thought it might be useful. He asked whether I had also stored the underground tank. I opened another portal and dropped the tank onto the runway. The impact cracked the pavement. Owen took off his headset, rubbed his face, and told me never to do that again. I agreed. Then I dropped the gas station's roof beside it. Hangar accepted me faster than the grocery store group had. Maybe it was because I brought fuel. Maybe it was because Owen did not care whether an ability looked impressive as long as it solved a problem. He gave me access to every broken machine in the base. I took all of them. Trucks vanished into my warehouse. Tool cabinets rolled through glowing doors. 2 small planes entered wing first through openings tilted at 45 degrees. I stored scaffolding, spare engines, barrels, tires, sheet metal, and a crane that required 16 separate portals because my maximum opening was still too small for the boom. Inside, Owen and his mechanics had time. A lot of time. 1 outside hour gave us nearly 2.5 days. People still needed sleep and food according to their own bodies, so we could not stay forever, but machines did not complain. We built while the horde approached. Owen touched the grocery store missile wreckage I had recovered after killing the giant. He understood what I had attempted and insulted nearly every part of it. Then he helped me build a better one. We turned the warehouse into a factory. The stored loading dock became an assembly platform. Conveyor belts from the grocery store moved parts between stations. Refrigeration motors powered saws. Car batteries ran lights. Propane heated a crude forge. The generator fed welding equipment. Shopping carts carried ammunition instead of cereal. My authority moved heavy objects between workers. I could float engines above the floor, rotate steel plates in the air, and hold parts steady while people welded. Work that normally required cranes happened with hand signals and thought. The first machine we completed was not a missile. It was a door launcher. Owen mounted a metal frame to the back of a truck. The frame held 6 rectangular plates shaped like my portals. Each plate had cameras, range markers, and folding braces. I could store the entire truck, release it onto a battlefield, and use the frame to aim my openings at exact angles. I did not need it. My portals already floated, but I liked the look of it. The second machine was more useful. He took a crop dusting plane, removed the chemical tanks, and replaced them with steel cables attached to giant hooks. I stored the plane while its propeller was spinning. Inside the warehouse, the engine slowed almost to a stop because it was an object not linked to a guest. The fuel barely burned. Outside, I could release it at full speed from any angle. I now had a reusable plane-shaped projectile. The third machine made Owen laugh. He mounted 4 industrial fans behind a row of portals. Air blew into the warehouse from outside through one opening, traveled across the fans, and exited through another. By changing the angle, I created a wind cannon. The first test launched a vending machine through the hangar wall. The second test launched the manager through a pile of foam cushions. That was an accident, mostly. By the time the horde reached the outer freeway, my warehouse had roads painted across its floor. A machine shop stood beside the safe zone. Fuel tanks sat behind concrete walls. The first 10 shelves were now preserved in the center, like a monument to my humiliation. Lizard lived in a fenced pen and had learned to eat from a metal bucket. I refused to name it, because naming a giant monster felt like the first step toward pretending it would not eat me. And Damien arrived. He did not attack the hangar. He stood on a water tower half a mile away and sent a single corpse bird carrying a message tied to its leg. The message was only 6 words: "Open the warehouse or I open them." At first, I thought it was a threat against the survivors. Then every monster gate in the western half of the city burst at once. Dead creatures poured out, not living monsters, corpses, thousands of them. Damien had been collecting bodies since the first wave, linking them together with his black threads and hiding them in the gates. Now he released them in a moving wall aimed directly at the hangar. The living horde from the east was still coming. We were about to be crushed between life and death. People began loading planes. Owen told me we could save maybe 100 before the runway became unusable. There were more than 200 people in the hangar. I looked toward the incoming corpse army, then I looked toward the living horde. They were enemies, they just did not know it yet. I opened a portal at the far end of the runway and released the stored crop duster at full speed. It shot into the air, hooks trailing behind it. I opened a second portal in front of the plane, angled toward the east. The crop duster vanished and reappeared above the living horde. Its hooks caught 3 flying monsters and a creature shaped like a 6-legged bull. Before the plane could crash, I opened another portal beneath it and brought it back into storage. The captured monsters slammed across my warehouse floor in slow motion. My authority grabbed them. I moved the bull into a reinforced pen. I pinned the flyers beneath steel beams. Workers scattered, but Owen stayed beside me, watching the process with narrowed eyes. He understood before I explained. Living monsters hated dead ones. The lizard had proven that. So I spent the next 6 outside minutes harvesting the horde. Portals opened like traps beneath charging creatures. The crop duster dragged beasts through the sky. The wind cannon knocked smaller monsters through vertical doors. I captured anything strong enough to cause damage and stupid enough to run in a straight line. Inside, hours passed. We built release cages on wheeled platforms. We aimed them through portal frames. We marked each creature by size, speed, and likelihood of attacking me first. The last category was large. Damien's corpse army reached the western taxiway. The living horde reached the eastern fence. Owen climbed into the door launcher truck. The manager stood on the back with his stone fists raised, finally useful and too embarrassed to complain. Survivors lined the hangar with homemade weapons. I stood in the center of the runway. Damien raised one hand from the water tower. The dead charged, the living answered. I opened 60 doors. I could only maintain 3 portals at once with my own skill. But the metal frames Owen built were not portals, they were anchors. Once I created an opening inside a frame, the machine held its shape for 3 seconds after I released control. 6 frames on the truck became 6 doors. More frames lined the hangar roof, others hung from cranes. We had spent 2 days inside manufacturing them. 3 seconds was enough. First doors dropped captured bulls into the corpse army. The next released winged predators above Damien's water tower. Another opened beneath the front line of dead wolves and sent them falling into a concrete drainage tunnel I had stored earlier. The remaining doors connected opposite sides of the battlefield. Dead monsters charging from the west vanished through glowing rectangles and emerged facing east. Living monsters charging from the east emerged facing west. Both hordes hit each other at full speed. The collision sounded like a mountain breaking. I stood between them and conducted chaos. A corpse giant swung at me. I opened a door in front of its fist and another above a living rhino beast. The giant punched the rhino from the sky. The rhino landed on a pack of dead wolves. Flying serpent dived toward the hangar. I opened a portal beneath the gas station roof and dropped the entire structure into its path. The serpent crashed through the sign advertising cheap coffee. 3 dead lizards surrounded me. I opened portals under their feet, stored them, rotated them inside, and released them upside down over Damien. He cut his threads and let them fall. That told me his control had limits. He could command thousands at range, but anything moving too unpredictably became a burden, so I made everything unpredictable. I used the wind cannon through portals to create tornadoes of debris. I released refrigerated air at ground level and hot forge air above it. The temperature clash filled the runway with spinning fog. Door anchors opened and closed in the mist. Monsters vanished, reappeared, collided, flew upward, and dropped sideways. The hangar base became a giant pinball machine, and I was operating every bumper. Damien remained on the water tower, calm behind his wall of corpses. I needed him off that tower. Owen had one final machine. He had taken the engine from a passenger jet that would never fly again. We mounted it on a reinforced platform inside the warehouse. Fuel lines connected to the underground tank. The exhaust pointed at a portal frame. I opened the intake outside behind Damien. I opened the exhaust in front of him. Then Owen started the engine. The jet turbine inhaled half the fog bank through one door and fired it through the other at hundreds of miles per hour. Damien's coat ripped away. The water tower bent. Every corpse around him flew into the air like leaves. He held on with one hand. I admired the effort. Then I released the bakery oven through a portal above him. It missed. The oven smashed through the tower's water tank instead. Thousands of gallons burst outward. The jet exhaust caught the water and turned it into a horizontal flood. Damien vanished in the blast. His black threads snapped. Every corpse on the battlefield collapsed. Living horde kept fighting for another minute, mostly because I kept dropping parts of the dead horde on them. When the last large beast tried to flee, I opened a portal beneath it and added it to my collection. The runway went silent. My level climbed from 13 to 22. The warehouse expanded again. Lights raced across the darkness until the visible floor became wider than the entire airport. New control appeared in my mind. I could set different time speeds in different zones. I could create permanent anchor points. I could assign limited authority to trusted guests. And the black metal door at the far edge opened 1 inch. Cold wind flowed through the gap. Something on the other side breathed. I had won the battle, saved the hangar, and driven Damien away. But when I searched the flooded runway, there was no body. Only his message pinned beneath the bakery oven. The paper was soaked, but one sentence remained readable. Your warehouse is not empty. I spent the next 12 warehouse hours staring at the black door. That sounds cautious until you remember only 12 minutes passed outside. Owen stood beside me with a wrench in one hand and a rifle in the other. He had touched the door and learned nothing. According to his ability, it was not a machine. It had no hinges, no gears, and no locking mechanism. It was simply a slab of metal pretending to be a door because that was the shape my mind understood. The gap remained 1 inch wide. Cold air leaked through it, so did the smell of wet soil. The warehouse behind us was louder than ever. Survivors celebrated. Mechanics repaired vehicles. Captured monsters slammed against cages in slow-time pens. The manager had appointed himself head of security without asking me, which was harmless because the warehouse ignored every order he gave it. I should have focused on the people I had saved. Instead, I crouched and looked through the gap. I saw grass. Not a patch of grass growing between concrete cracks. An entire field rolled beneath a dark blue sky. Far in the distance, silver trees leaned in a wind that did not reach the warehouse. A river reflected 2 moons. My inventory was not just a warehouse. The warehouse was the front room. Something enormous moved through the field. I closed the door. Owen asked what I saw. I told him free landscaping. We did not open it again immediately. Power had kept me alive, but curiosity could still kill me. I built a containment zone first. Concrete barriers formed a half circle around the door. The jet engine platform pointed directly at it. Portal anchors covered the floor and ceiling. Captured bulls waited in release cages. I placed the bakery oven above the doorway because it had become a tradition. Then I invited the only person at the airport who had looked at my warehouse and complained that the support layout was inefficient. Her name was Harper. She had arrived at the hangar 2 days before me, after crossing the city inside a mining truck. Her ability let her join 2 non-living materials as if they had always been one piece. No glue. No bolts, no welding. She could press steel to concrete and make the seam disappear. She could attach a tire to a wall, a blade to a chain, or a staircase to the side of a moving vehicle. Everyone had used her as a repair worker. Harper hated repair work. She wanted to build impossible things. First time she entered my warehouse, she walked past the monster pens, the factory, and the gas station roof without reacting. Then she saw the floating engine blocks I controlled with thought. Her eyes widened. I knew that expression. It was the look of someone whose common sense had just died peacefully. I showed her the black door. Harper placed one hand against it, frowned, and said she could not fuse anything to the surface. The material rejected her ability. That made her smile. People who enjoy impossible problems are dangerous. People who smile at impossible problems are useful. We opened the door together. The field beyond was quiet. I created a coin-sized portal above the grass and looked around from several angles. No creatures waited near the entrance. The 2 moons gave enough light to see, but neither moved. Time in that place was almost frozen compared with me, even slower than the warehouse. I extended a metal pole through the doorway. Nothing attacked. I rolled a camera through. Still nothing. I released the grocery store manager through. That part was not intentional. He had leaned against the test cart while complaining that the door was unsafe. The floor tilted, the cart rolled, and he crossed the threshold before anyone caught him. He landed in the grass and moved like a man underwater. A silver tree bent toward him. Its branches opened into fingers. I yanked the manager back with warehouse authority 1 second before the tree closed around his head. He returned with grass in his shoes and a new respect for standing behind painted lines. The field came alive. Every silver tree unfolded, long roots pulled free from the soil. The distant shape rose on 6 legs, revealing a shell covered in glowing moss. Smaller creatures climbed from the river. They had round bodies, long arms, and faces like empty masks. They did not rush the warehouse. They stared at the open door. The giant shelled beast took 1 step toward us. Its foot sank into the grass. The entire field rippled. Then the silver trees charged. I fired the jet engine. The blast hit the first tree and stripped every leaf from its branches. It leaned backward but did not fall. Harper slapped a steel plate against the engine platform, fused it into place, and redirected the exhaust into a narrow channel. The wind became a cutting beam. 3 trees snapped. Their trunks landed across the doorway. I tried to pull them into the warehouse. My authority caught them instantly. The moment the complete trunks crossed, their movement returned to normal. Branches whipped around like angry snakes. Roots stabbed through concrete barriers. Owen fired into one. Bullets punched holes that closed around the wounds. The trees were alive, but not like monsters. Their bodies were a mix of wood, silver fibers, and blue liquid flowing through hollow veins. Harper saw the liquid and shouted for containers. I had already opened a portal beneath the broken trunks. They fell into a refrigeration tank. The blue liquid drained out, touched the metal, and froze the entire tank solid. The remaining tree creatures crossed the field. I could have closed the black door. I tried. It did not move. The door had opened because my level reached 22. Apparently, opening it was permanent. The warehouse was no longer a perfect shelter. It had a back entrance. The 6-legged shelled creature approached behind the trees. It was larger than the hangar, and the glowing moss on its back released clouds of sparkling spores. Wherever the spores landed, new silver shoots burst from the grass. A moving forest was coming into my inventory. I looked at Harper. Harper looked at the factory. We both had the same idea. We did not defend the warehouse. We renovated the battlefield. Harper fused steel plates into a giant funnel around the black door. I moved the plates while she joined them, creating walls in seconds. Owen repositioned the jet engine at the narrow end. Mechanics brought fans, fuel, cables, and every blade they could find. The tree creatures reached the threshold. I opened portals beneath the front row and sent them through the factory. One emerged above a moving conveyor belt. Industrial saws cut into its roots. Another dropped into the monster pen, where the captured lizard attacked it out of boredom. A third fell beside the forge, and Harper fused its branches to the floor before it could stand. The warehouse became a wood processing plant with screaming. Blue liquid-filled tanks, silver fibers piled in bundles. The trunks were lighter than steel but stronger than hardwood. Harper joined them into beams. Owen discovered the fibers conducted mana better than copper. We were not being invaded anymore. We were harvesting. The giant shelled creature noticed. It lowered its head and charged. The field shook, silver trees scattered. The black doorway was wide enough for the creature's shell, but barely. If it crossed, I could control it. If it became stuck halfway, it could smash the entrance and everything around it. I needed it to commit. I released every captured monster into the field behind it. Bulls, winged predators, lizards, and rhino beasts poured from portals across the creature's back. The shelled giant roared and accelerated. Its 6 legs tore trenches through the grass. It aimed straight at me. I stood in the funnel. Owen told me to move. Harper told Owen not to ruin my concentration. That was when I decided I liked her. The creature reached the threshold. Its head passed through, then 2 legs. Then half the shell. I activated the jet engine. Not in front of it, behind it. The exhaust portal opened against the creature's rear shell. A focused wall of air pushed with enough force to peel grass from the field. The giant's back legs left the ground. Its shell scraped against the black frame. Silver sparks filled the warehouse. For 1 second, the creature became stuck. I opened 3 portals in the field beneath the river. Water dropped through the warehouse ceiling. Thousands of gallons struck the giant from above. The shell became slick. The jet engine pushed again. The creature shot through the door like a cork from a bottle. Its entire body entered my inventory. Warehouse authorities seized it. I stopped the creature in mid-air inches from my face. 6 legs kicked slowly. Its mouth opened, showing rows of flat, grinding teeth. Glowing moss covered its shell in thick layers. I rotated it upside down. Then I lowered it into a pen built from fused silver trees. The creature hit the floor, rolled once, and stared at me with deep green eyes. It did not look angry. It looked tired. The smaller mask-faced creatures reached the doorway and stopped. None crossed. They gathered at the edge of the field, watching the giant in its pen. The giant made a low humming sound. The masked creatures answered. Harper studied them. Owen studied the giant. I studied the glowing moss. Then one of the mechanics tripped into the pen. The giant opened its mouth. Everyone raised weapons. It licked the mechanic's jacket. The glowing moss spread across the fabric, sealing a tear. The creature was not a predator. It was a moving garden. The silver trees had attacked because the manager stepped on their roots. The giant had charged because we started cutting them apart. I had captured the local equivalent of a farmer and turned its field into lumber. I felt a little guilty. Then I saw the blue liquid freezing a steel tank and felt less guilty. We changed tactics. Instead of fighting the masked creatures, I placed piles of mineral salt and monster meat near the door. They carried the offerings into the field. In return, they dragged bundles of fallen silver branches to the entrance. The giant hummed whenever they returned. By the end of the day, I had an interdimensional trade route with people whose faces were holes. No contracts, no negotiations, just salt for magic wood. Simple. The field solved our biggest problem, food. Glowing moss from the giant's shell grew on almost anything. It fed on heat, monster blood, and small amounts of mana. Moss produced edible bulbs that tasted like spicy potatoes. Seeds from the dark grass sprouted in warehouse soil. The river held white fish the size of shovels. I did not need to steal groceries anymore. I needed farmland. Harper built it. She fused silver tree beams into frames stretching across acres of warehouse floor. We hung lights above them, powered by monster crystals and generators. Owen converted irrigation pumps. I opened small portals beneath the field's river and let water flow into storage tanks. Soil came through in entire squares, roots and all. Within 2 outside days, the warehouse held greenhouses. Within 5, it held fields. Time zones made growth ridiculous. Crops stayed in slow time while we worked. Then I accelerated selected plots relative to the rest of the warehouse. A week of plant growth passed during 1 outside hour. The glowing moss spread even faster. We harvested food, medicine, fibers, and fuel. The survivor base moved inside permanently. Sleeping areas became neighborhoods. Workshop lanes became streets. We built water towers, kitchens, bathhouses, classrooms, and training yards. I stored houses from abandoned blocks, but moving them whole cost too much mana, so Harper fused smaller sections together. One home had the front of a bank, the roof of a diner, and windows from an airport terminal. It looked terrible. People loved it. The manager stopped calling my ability useless. He started calling the warehouse our city. I corrected him. It was my inventory. That difference mattered. Not because I wanted to rule anyone. I had no interest in speeches, meetings, or deciding who got which bathroom. I wanted the freedom to build weapons without someone asking whether a falling gas station violated local safety codes. So Owen handled the people. Harper handled construction. I handled impossible nonsense. My reputation spread through the city. Survivors told stories about doors opening in the sky. They claimed I carried an army in my pocket. They said I could swallow buildings, steal rivers, and make monsters fall upward. Most of those claims were exaggerated. I could not make monsters fall upward, yet. The first person to challenge that reputation arrived on a bolt of lightning. His name was Felix. He landed on the airport runway hard enough to crack the pavement, wearing a red jacket and carrying a narrow black spear. Electricity crawled across his arms. Behind him, a line of burned monster bodies marked the path he had taken across the city. Felix led a powerful group based in a downtown hotel. He had reached level 31 by clearing gates alone. People called him the Storm Lance. He called himself that too, which told me everything I needed to know. He had come for supplies. More specifically, he had come because he heard I was hiding supplies from stronger fighters. I opened a portal and showed him the warehouse farms. He stared at acres of crops, machine shops, monster pens, and houses under endless white lights. Then he looked at me and said it was a cute hiding place. I almost dropped the bakery oven on him. Instead, I invited him to a test. A new gate had opened beneath the downtown baseball stadium. Its energy readings were higher than any gate in the city. Felix planned to clear it with his group. Owen wanted it destroyed before the migrating monsters reached it. I wanted whatever was inside. Felix said I would slow him down. I told him I could beat him to the gate without leaving the warehouse. He laughed. We started at sunrise. Felix became lightning and launched himself along the freeway. I entered my inventory, stepped onto the crop duster, and had Harper fuse my boots to the wing. Owen spun the propeller. I stored the plane at full speed. Then I began portal crawling across the city. Door opened 30 feet ahead. The plane shot through. Before it traveled another 30 feet, I opened a new door in front of it and one behind. The plane crossed again. Each pair of portals advanced us while almost no outside time passed between jumps. To anyone watching, the crop duster flickered across the sky in impossible steps. Felix saw me pass him above the freeway. His expression was worth the fuel. He increased his speed. Lightning shattered windows below him. I increased my portal rate. The crop duster blinked between buildings, under bridges, through the empty shell of a shopping mall, and directly across a monster gate. A winged creature emerged at the wrong moment. The plane hit it. Harper had reinforced the nose with silvertree wood. The creature entered my inventory through the portal with us, bounced across the wing, and became stuck to the tail when Harper slapped it with a strip of fused metal. I arrived above the stadium, towing a screaming monster like a banner. Felix landed on the roof 4 seconds later. He looked at the plane. He looked at the creature. He looked at Harper fused to the opposite wing for balance. Then he said the race had been stupid. That is what people say when they lose something important. The stadium gate pulsed below us. Black vines covered the field. The seats were filled with sleeping creatures shaped like armored apes, except they wore no armor. Their bodies were covered in natural stone plates, and each one held a piece of the stadium torn loose as a weapon. At the center of the field stood a crystal pillar. Damien stood beside it. He had reached the gate first. Black threads spread from his fingers into every sleeping creature in the stadium. He looked up at our plane and smiled. And 20,000 stone faces opened their eyes. 20,000 stone creatures woke at the same time. The sound of their bodies moving through the seats was louder than the crowd at any game that stadium had ever held. Felix lowered his spear and finally stopped smiling. I did the opposite. Not because I was confident, because panic had become the place where my best ideas lived. Stone creatures climbed over one another toward the roof. Some carried seats as clubs. Others had ripped concrete rails from the aisles. Black threads connected each body to Damien, but the threads did not pulse like they had with fresh corpses. These creatures were old, dry. Their bodies had been stored beneath the stadium gate for years, maybe centuries, waiting around the crystal pillar like tools in a locked cabinet. Damien had found the handle. He raised both hands. The entire lower deck jumped. I opened a portal beneath the crop duster and dropped us into the warehouse before the first stone body reached the roof. Felix followed without permission. He became lightning, crossed the wing, and dove through the closing opening. He landed inside my farm, slid through 3 rows of glowing potatoes, and destroyed half a harvest. Harper looked at the smoking trench. Felix looked at Harper. I told him those potatoes were worth more than his jacket. He asked what my plan was. I showed him the stadium through a wall of tiny portals. My range outside was still limited by visible anchors, but the crop duster had circled the entire building before we entered. I had placed cameras on the roof, beneath the seats, in the service tunnels, and against the field. Owen had insisted on mapping every battlefield before entering. The camera network gave me eyes everywhere, and anywhere I could see, I could open a door. Damien's army reached the roof and found us gone. He sent groups toward the surrounding streets. Others poured into the tunnels. He expected us to escape. Instead, I stole the stadium. Not all at once. I started with the seats. Rows vanished beneath the stone creatures. Red plastic chairs, metal supports, cup holders, old popcorn, and entire sections of concrete dropped through portals and landed in an empty warehouse zone. Thousands of monsters lost their footing. They fell into gaps, collided, and became tangled in their own black threads. Damien adjusted quickly. He moved them toward the field. I stored the stairs. Stone creatures took one step and found empty air. They dropped from the upper deck into the lower bowl. Others tried climbing the walls. Harper had an idea. She fused a silvertree beam to a giant portal anchor, turning it into a handle. I placed the opening vertically against the stadium's inner wall. Harper swung the beam. The portal moved like a glowing windshield wiper. Everything it passed over entered storage. Concrete walls vanished in clean vertical slices. Railings disappeared. Luxury boxes became open air. Hundreds of stone creatures dropped into the warehouse as complete bodies crossed the moving doorway. Warehouse authority froze them. Inside, they were still connected to Damien by black threads stretching through the portals. The threads crossed space without breaking. That was useful. I rotated every captured creature to face the same direction. Harper fused their feet to a massive steel plate. Owen rolled the plate onto tracks. Felix watched us assemble the strangest weapon he had ever seen. Damien pulled on the threads. 20 captured bodies tried to march. Because their feet were fused down, the entire plate moved. Owen's eyes lit up. We had built an engine powered by Damien's control. We captured more creatures, 50, 100, 300 stone bodies joined the plate in neat rows. Their arms swung, their legs pushed. The plate rolled faster along the tracks. Owen connected the moving platform to the factory's generators. Damien's army began producing electricity for my warehouse. Felix stared at the power gauges climbing. I told him not everyone needed lightning skills. He did not enjoy that. Damien sensed the resistance. He ordered the captured creatures to stop. The generators slowed. So I opened a portal in front of them and showed them Felix. Damien hated Felix almost as much as he hated me. Every stone creature lunged. The platform accelerated. Felix became the world's most expensive carrot on a stick. With the extra power, we activated every portal anchor we had. Doors appeared across the stadium. The battlefield folded into itself. A group charging down the third base line ran through a glowing rectangle and emerged above center field. Another group entered a concession stand and fell out of the scoreboard. I connected the home dugout to the upper deck, the parking garage to the pitcher's mound, and a restroom to the roof. That last one was not tactically important, but confusion matters. Damien stood beside the crystal pillar, protected by a dense ring of stone bodies. He kept one hand pressed against the crystal. Black energy flowed up his arm. The more creatures I captured, the brighter the pillar became. He was not just controlling them, he was draining them. The stone army began cracking. Dark light poured from the gaps and gathered inside Damien's chest. His level rose with every body that collapsed. I had been helping him. Felix saw it too. He spun his spear, covered himself in lightning, and prepared to charge through a portal directly at Damien. I closed it. Felix nearly ran into a tractor. He demanded an explanation. I pointed at the crystal. Damien wanted a direct fight. Felix's lightning would shatter stone bodies, feed the pillar, and make Damien stronger. My portal chaos was doing the same thing more slowly. We needed to remove the power source without breaking it. I could not store the pillar while Damien touched it. His body made it part of a living network. I could not force the entire network through one opening because it included thousands of creatures spread through the stadium. So I needed Damien to let go. Harper suggested cutting off his hand. Simple ideas have value. Felix liked that one. I had a better version. Giant shelled garden creature rested in its pen. Glowing moss covered its back, and silver shoots grew around its feet. It reacted to threats by releasing clouds of spores that repaired living tissue and bound broken material together. I opened a small portal above Damien. Then I scraped an entire layer of moss into the opening. Green bulbs, spores, and wet roots dropped onto his head. Damien looked up in disbelief. The moss touched the black threads. It grew. His threads were made from his own living energy. The moss treated them like wounded roots. It spread along every line, wrapped them in glowing fibers, and fused the network into a thick green web. Damien tried to move his fingers. Thousands of threads pulled against one another. His hand snapped backward. Felix laughed so hard his lightning flickered. Damien released the crystal with one hand and cut the threads using black energy. The moss regrew faster. He released the second hand and tried to tear the web from his arms. That was the moment I needed. I opened a portal around the crystal pillar. The field beneath it vanished too. Soil, vines, buried roots, and the entire foundation dropped into my warehouse as one complete mass. Damien fell into the empty hole. Felix launched himself through a second portal. Lightning struck the field. The explosion threw Damien across the dirt, but it did not kill him. Black energy hardened around his body. He caught Felix's spear with one hand and sent a pulse through it. Felix flew backward, electricity turning dark along his arms. Damien rose. Without the crystal, he still controlled the stone army. The threads had changed. They no longer connected to his fingers. They grew from his back like a black forest. He had absorbed enough power to make the control permanent. Felix attacked again. Their battle tore the field apart. Lightning spears crossed black whips. Felix moved faster, but Damien predicted every angle through the eyes of his creatures. Stone bodies threw themselves between attacks. Each time Felix destroyed one, Damien recovered another piece of energy. I could not keep watching. I entered the stadium through a portal behind the scoreboard. That sounds brave. It was actually the safest place left. Most of the upper structure had been stored. The scoreboard leaned at a dangerous angle, and burning seats rained across the field. In other words, nobody expected me to stand there. I placed my hand against the scoreboard support. The structure was too large to store through one opening, so I removed it in pieces. Bolts vanished, beams dropped into the warehouse. Display panels slid through portals. The giant screen flickered, showing an advertisement for hot dogs while the stadium collapsed around it. Damien noticed. He sent a wave of stone creatures toward me. I released the captured lizard through a portal on the scoreboard roof. It had spent days in the pen eating glowing moss and monster meat. It was twice as large, its scales had turned silver at the edges, and it hated being used as ammunition. The lizard charged downhill across the tilted screen. Stone creatures climbed upward. They met in the middle. The scoreboard displayed a smiling cartoon hot dog behind them. I removed the final support. The entire structure began to fall. I opened a portal beneath it. The scoreboard entered my warehouse at an angle, moved across a prepared roller track, and exited through another portal high above the field. It fell twice. The first fall gave it speed. The warehouse track redirected that speed sideways. The second fall turned it into a rotating blade the size of a building. Damien looked up as the stadium scoreboard sliced through his stone army. Bodies flew in every direction. The edge struck the field, carved a trench, and launched Damien into the air. Felix met him above the crater. One lightning-charged spear hit Damien in the chest. I opened a portal behind him. Damien flew through it. He entered my warehouse completely. For the first time, warehouse authority touched him. I tried to freeze his body. The floor cracked. Damien moved slowly, but he moved. Black threads stabbed into the concrete and pulled him forward. His absorbed energy resisted my control. He turned his head toward the farms, the homes, and the machine shops. A hungry smile crossed his face. He was inside my world, exactly where he wanted to be. I had made one terrible mistake. Warehouse authority could rearrange stored objects and suppress hostile guests, but Damien was neither. The moment he absorbed the crystal's power, his body had become a moving gate network. Part of him existed outside through every thread still connected to the stone army. He was not fully stored. I could not control him. Damien drove both hands into the floor. Black lines spread across the concrete. Every captured monster in my pens screamed. Threads rose beneath them. The bulls, lizards, winged creatures, and rhino beasts turned toward the safe zone. Even the giant shelled garden creature staggered as black energy crawled over its moss. Damien had entered my warehouse to steal my army. People ran from the farms. Owen activated barriers. Harper began fusing gates shut. Felix came through the portal behind Damien, but the black lines wrapped his ankles and threw him into a fuel tank. I had seconds, so I stopped treating Damien as a person. I treated him as cargo. The warehouse could not control his full network, but it could control everything around him. I moved the floor. A square mile of concrete slid sideways beneath his feet. Buildings, pens, roads, and workshops separated along gaps I had prepared. The entire inhabited zone shifted away from Damien like pieces on a game board. He remained standing on one isolated platform, connected to nothing. Then I rotated the platform vertically. Damien fell, caught himself with threads, and climbed. I rotated it again. He adjusted. I spun it faster. The platform became a giant wheel. Damien's threads wrapped around the edges. His body slammed against concrete again and again, but he refused to let go. Felix asked whether I planned to defeat him by making him dizzy. I told him to watch. Harper fused steel rails around the spinning platform. Owen connected the rails to the generator system. Damien's resistance turned the wheel. The wheel turned turbines. Once again, my enemy became a power source. This time I used that power immediately. The crystal pillar rested in a containment pit nearby. It still glowed. Its energy no longer fed Damien, but the black threads covering the stone creatures resonated with it. I opened hundreds of tiny portals around the spinning platform. Each one connected to a different captured stone creature outside. Damien's threads passed through. Then I closed the portals in sequence. The inventory rejected every incomplete connection and snapped the threads back outside. One by one, Damien's anchors vanished. His movement slowed. Warehouse authority pressed down harder. He screamed and released more threads. I cut those too. The last connection led to a creature buried beneath the pitcher's mound. I opened a portal around it, stored the complete body, and severed nothing. Damien became fully enclosed inside my inventory. The rules recognized him. He froze in midair. Silence fell across the warehouse. I stopped the platform with a thought. Damien hung upside down above it, one hand stretched toward me, his face twisted with fury. He could breathe, he could think, but time around him moved so slowly that one blink would take an outside year. I lowered him into a transparent containment box made from silver tree fibers. Felix wanted to finish him. I refused, not because I was merciful. Because a living enemy was more useful than a dead one. Damien understood monster control. He had explored gates. He knew things about my warehouse that I did not. Killing him would turn answers into a corpse. Also, he had produced enough electricity during the fight to power our farms for 6 months. I respected efficiency. The stone army outside collapsed. Without Damien's control, their bodies crumbled into black sand. The stadium gate shrank. The ruined structure groaned around us. I stored the crystal pillar, the remaining field, the useful sections of the stadium, and the giant scoreboard. Felix watched the entire building disappear piece by piece. He did not call my warehouse cute again. My level reached 34. New authority spread through my mind. I could open 12 portals at once without anchors. My range increased from 30 feet to 300. I could place exits using any object marked by my mana, even if I could not see it. And I could give stored structures momentum without first dropping them. That last ability changed everything. Before, a building released from storage obeyed gravity. Now I could choose how fast it was already moving when it crossed the door. A house could emerge at the speed of a car. A truck could emerge at the speed of sound. The bakery oven had become a missile. Harper placed one hand on my shoulder and told me not to look so happy. Owen asked what had changed. I demonstrated with a folding chair. The chair crossed the warehouse, entered a portal, and emerged above the stadium traveling sideways. It punched through 6 concrete walls and vanished into the city. Everyone stared at the hole. I admitted I might need practice. Then the ground beneath the stadium cracked, not from the chair. The gate was shrinking, but something below it was rising. A massive stone hand pushed through the baseball field, then another. An eyeless head followed, covered in the same black crystal as the pillar. The ancient stone army had not been guarding the pillar, it had been feeding it. The real creature beneath the stadium pulled itself upward, wearing the foundations like broken jewelry. Its shoulders lifted entire blocks. Its back scraped the lowest clouds. Every remaining gate in the city turned toward it like flowers facing the sun. Felix looked at me. I looked at the giant. Then I looked at the stadium sections in my inventory. I had always wanted to throw a baseball field at someone. The creature beneath the stadium stood taller than the downtown towers. Its body was not one solid statue. Thousands of black crystal plates floated around a hollow center, held together by magnetic force. Through the gaps, I saw a burning core. Every time the giant moved, pieces of the city lifted from the ground and joined its body. Cars became scales, streetlights became fingers, concrete wrapped around its legs. It was assembling itself from Phoenix. I refused to let a monster steal my hobby. The giant reached toward the shrinking gate. Energy flowed from every other gate in the city, traveling through the streets in bright lines. The stone hand closed around the baseball stadium. Felix launched first. He became a red bolt, ran up the creature's arm, and drove his spear into a crystal joint. Lightning flashed through the floating plates. 3 city blocks lost power. The giant barely noticed. It flicked one finger. Felix crossed the skyline like a failed firework. I opened a portal in his path. He entered my warehouse at several hundred miles per hour, flew through a tunnel lined with mattresses, and landed in the glowing potato field again. Harper screamed at him for the second harvest. I focused on the giant. Its body was too large for any opening I could create. My maximum doorway was wider than a house now, but the monster's ankle could crush a house. I could store pieces only if they separated completely, and the floating plates reconnected before falling. The burning core was the only stable part. I needed to reach it. The giant took a step toward downtown. Its foot landed on the freeway and flattened half a mile of road. Every monster in the city turned toward it. Living creatures crawled from alleys. Gate beasts emerged from tunnels. Even the wild creatures in my pens pressed against their fences, responding to a silent call. The crystal titan was becoming a new nest. Owen brought the crop duster around inside the warehouse. Harper attached silver tree blades to its wings. Felix climbed from the potatoes with smoke rising from his jacket. I told them I had a plan. Felix asked whether the plan involved throwing a stadium. I told him that was only the opening move. I released the baseball field first. The entire square of dirt and grass emerged 300 feet above the Titan's head with sideways momentum. It struck like a green carpet traveling faster than sound. Soil exploded across the crystal plates. The pitcher's mound hit one eye. Bases bounced down the creature's chest. The Titan staggered. I released the lower stadium bowl next. Concrete seating sections appeared in a circle around its shoulders. I rotated each piece in storage and gave them inward momentum. They slammed together like the jaws of a giant trap, surrounding the Titan's neck. Harper opened portals along the seams and fused the sections together as they collided. The monster now wore a baseball stadium as a collar. It grabbed the concrete ring and tried to pull it apart. Felix attacked through a portal beside its elbow. Lightning entered the joint. I opened another portal in front of the Titan's opposite fist. When it punched at the stadium collar, its arm vanished through my door and emerged from the second opening facing backward. The Titan punched itself in the spine. A tower fell over. Felix stared at me from the elbow joint. I told him to keep up. The Titan roared without a mouth. Magnetic force ripped cars from streets and fired them into the air. Thousands of vehicles became a storm of metal. I opened 12 portals in a dome around us. Cars entered one side of my warehouse and exited through another, redirected toward the Titan. Its own projectiles struck its body from every angle. Buses hit crystal plates. Trucks spun through the hollow gaps. A yellow taxi buried itself in the burning core and instantly melted. The core could be damaged. That was all I needed to know. Owen released the modified crop duster. It shot from a portal beneath the Titan's ribs, Silvertree blades spinning. Felix stood on one wing. Harper stood on the other. Both of them fused to the metal so the turn would not throw them off. I controlled their path by opening doors in front of the plane. They entered the Titan's body. Floating crystal plates tried to crush them. I moved the plane through the warehouse between attacks, advancing in flashing jumps. The Titan, the aircraft appeared and disappeared across its hollow chest. Felix stabbed joints as we passed. Harper fused loose plates to one another, locking them in bad angles. The crop duster circled the burning core. Damien's stolen crystal pillar reacted inside my storage pit. It pulled toward the Titan so strongly that the containment walls cracked. The pillar was not a battery. It was a piece of the core. I released it. The black crystal shot through a portal and entered the Titan's hollow body. The burning core opened around it like a flower. Every floating plate stopped moving. For half a second, the Titan became perfectly still. Then the pillar fused into place. The core doubled in brightness. Felix yelled something about my terrible plan. He was correct. The Titan's body expanded. Crystal plates drew closer. Its shoulders widened. New arms grew from surrounding buildings. The stadium collar cracked. I had returned its missing heart, but I had not done it by accident. The pillar had spent days inside my warehouse. Harper had fused Silvertree fibers around it. Owen had wrapped those fibers through copper coils, machinery, and portal anchors. The pillar looked normal, but it was connected to 5 miles of cable stored in slow time. The Titan had swallowed my extension cord. I activated the warehouse turbines. Energy flowed backward through the pillar. The giant froze again. Its burning core dimmed as my generators drank power. Lights across the warehouse became painfully bright. Factory machines started on their own. Irrigation pumps launched water over the farms. The manager's hair stood upright for no reason, which improved the day. The Titan pulled against the cable. I let it. 5 miles of wire unspooled through the portal, then 10, then 20. Every foot passed between spinning generator wheels. The Titan tried stepping away, and its own movement produced more power. Owen called it the largest hand-cranked generator in history. I called it Phase 2. The warehouse could not store the giant, but it could store what the giant stood on. I opened portals across the freeway beneath its feet. Asphalt vanished. Concrete foundations vanished. Sewer tunnels, drainage channels, dirt, and bedrock dropped into my warehouse in complete chunks. A crater formed under the Titan. It sank knee-deep. I opened portals beneath the river in the silver field beyond the black door. Water poured from the sky above the crater, not a stream, a river. I had spent days installing stone channels and gates near the interdimensional river. When the flood began, I opened every gate. Millions of gallons crashed onto the Titan, filled the crater, and turned the ground into mud. The crystal plates repelled water, but the concrete and metal it had absorbed did not. Its legs became heavier. Mud swallowed its feet. Then Harper released tanks of blue tree liquid. The liquid touched the flood and froze instantly. A lake of ice formed around the Titan's legs. It pulled once. The entire frozen crater lifted. That was ridiculous even by my standards. The Titan tore a disk of ice and earth from the city and raised it like a platform beneath its feet. It was now carrying the battlefield. Felix reached the core and drove his spear into the pillar. Lightning entered the cable network. Warehouse generators screamed, stored machines overloaded. The lights went dark for 1 second, then warehouse authority expanded. The energy from the Titan did not increase my level, but it fed my dimension. The black door widened. The ceiling above the original warehouse finally became visible, miles overhead. Lines of white light formed a grid across it. More importantly, my maximum portal size increased. I felt the new limit. It was not large enough for the Titan. It was large enough for the frozen disk beneath it. I opened a circular doorway under the entire crater. The air turned blue, a glowing ring spread across the city, wider than the stadium. The frozen earth platform, the Titan, the floodwater, and several unfortunate parked cars began to sink through. The Titan sensed the danger. It jumped. Its feet left the ice 1 second before the disk entered my warehouse. The enormous portal remained open beneath it. The Titan hung in the air with no ground below. It began to fall. I opened the exit above it. The Titan fell through my warehouse and reappeared in the sky upside down. Then it fell toward the same portal again. I had built a loop. The Titan dropped through the city, entered my inventory, emerged above itself, and fell again. Each loop increased its speed. Crystal plates shook loose. Buildings broke from its body. Felix and Harper escaped through side portals while Owen watched the momentum readings climb. The giant fell 10 times, 20, 50. Soon it became a black blur crossing the same section of sky again and again. The air thundered. Windows shattered for miles. Its magnetic body could not reassemble under the force. I waited until the burning core separated from the outer plates. Then I closed the lower portal. The Titan hit the frozen crater disk inside my warehouse at a speed Owen refused to calculate. The impact created a new mountain. Concrete floor folded upward. Ice became fog. Crystal plates shot across the darkness. The burning core drove half a mile into the ground and stopped beneath layers of earth, stadium seats, cars, and one first base marker. Outside, the sky was empty. The city was quiet. Inside, every person in the warehouse had been thrown off their feet despite the safe zone. The farms leaned sideways. Windows shattered. The giant garden creature rolled onto its shell and kicked all 6 legs in the air. I remained standing only because Harper had fused my shoes to the control platform. Felix climbed from a pile of silver branches and asked whether I had just powerbombed a Titan through my inventory. I told him I preferred the term vertical recycling. The Titan was not dead. Its core still burned beneath the new mountain. Crystal plates dragged themselves through the rubble. The creature tried to rebuild. But now every part of it was inside my inventory. Warehouse authority pressed down. I separated the plates into different time zones. One group moved at normal speed. Another took a year to shift an inch. A third floated motionless above the farms, where Harper marked them for construction. The core resisted hardest. I could not freeze it completely. It pulsed like a second sun under the ground, so I turned the crater into a power station. Silvertree cables wrapped around the core. Owen built turbines above it. Harper fused crystal plates into containment walls. The Titan became the heart of my kingdom. My level rose to 51. I gained 24 simultaneous portals. My range expanded to 1 mile from any marked anchor. I could create moving anchor points that stayed linked to vehicles, creatures, or projectiles. And I could store sections of natural terrain without treating every rock and root as a separate object. That final ability was dangerous. It meant lakes, hills, forests, and pieces of sky were now items. The city celebrated for 3 days outside. Inside the warehouse, nearly 6 months passed in selected zones. We used that time. The farms became an agricultural district. Fields of grain spread beneath hanging lights. The giant garden creature moved through them, growing moss and repairing damaged plants. Mask-faced workers from beyond the black door began visiting daily, trading silver wood and blue sap for salt, metal tools, and music played from old radios. They had no mouths, but they enjoyed drums. The factory became an industrial district. Owen built vehicles designed specifically for portal warfare. Tanks were too slow and boring, so we built launch sleds, flying platforms, drill missiles, and rotating towers that could fire through doors in any direction. None wore heavy armor. Anything that needed armor had already failed by being hit. Harper built the city upward. She fused houses into towers, towers into bridges, and bridges into rings around the Titan power station. She created a spiral roadway where gravity changed by zone, allowing trucks to drive along walls and ceilings. Storage shelves became balconies. Airplane wings became roofs. The safe zone expanded until tens of thousands of people could live there. Owen called it a city. Other survivors called it Warehouse 1. Felix called it my oversized closet. I called it Pocket City because that annoyed him. My name spread beyond Phoenix. Groups arrived from desert towns, mountain shelters, and underground gates. They brought machines, seeds, knowledge, and monsters they could not kill. I stored useful buildings and left supplies in return. I opened portal roads between safe locations, letting people travel through Pocket City instead of crossing monster territory. I never became a king. I became the man people called when a mountain needed to move. That happened more often than expected. The first major request came from a settlement north of the city. A canyon had split open beneath their water source, and a nest of fire creatures had boiled the reservoir dry. They expected me to bring tanks of water. I brought the river. I opened a terrain portal beneath one section of the Silver Field's endless stream, redirected it through Pocket City, and released it above the empty reservoir. Water fell from clear sky for 2 hours. Fire creatures climbed from the canyon to stop me. Felix fought them on a bridge Harper built in midair from pieces of highway. Every time a creature breathed flames, I opened a portal and sent the fire into Pocket City's furnaces. The factories ran for a month on stolen dragon breath. When the largest fire creature emerged, I dropped a frozen lake on it. Lake had been collected from mountain snowmelt and stored in a slow zone. It hit the creature as one solid block, shattered, and refilled the reservoir at the same time. The settlement stopped doubting me. Felix did not. He claimed the victory belonged to his spear because he had pierced the creature's core. I reminded him he had done that while standing on my highway bridge, wearing a cooling jacket from my factory, powered by electricity from my captured Titan, while I redirected the flames that would have cooked him. He said support abilities did not count. I opened a portal beneath him and dropped him into the potato field. Harper had installed a sign there with his name crossed out. Months passed outside, years passed inside selected workshop zones. We became stronger, faster, and much more irresponsible. Then Damien blinked. His containment box was set to 1 second of personal time for every outside month. I accelerated it briefly when I needed information. Most of the time, he refused to speak. He believed silence made him frightening. It actually made him convenient furniture. On the day he blinked, every captured monster in Pocket City turned toward the western wall. The Titan core dimmed. The silver field beyond the black door went silent. Damien smiled. I accelerated his time enough for 1 sentence. He whispered that the Eater had found our scent. Then the sky outside turned red, not from sunset. Shadow whiter than the city moved across the desert clouds. It had wings made from storms and a body shaped like a floating island. Waterfalls poured from its underside. Forests grew along its back. Thousands of smaller monsters circled it like birds around a ship. The creature did not turn toward Pocket City because of me. It had been crossing the continent for years, consuming gates, nests, and awakened energy wherever it found them. Phoenix was simply next. Felix looked up at the living island and tightened his grip on his spear. Harper measured the wingspan and started laughing. Owen asked whether I could store it. I looked at the storm creature. Then I looked at the empty terrain zones inside my inventory. I told him not yet. But I could build a shelf big enough. The living island crossed the desert at walking speed. That was worse than flying fast. A fast enemy could overshoot. A slow enemy had time to eat everything. The creature's front looked like a cliff split by a mouth. Trees grew between its teeth. Each breath pulled clouds inward. Its wings were not flesh. They were rotating storm systems attached to long crystal bones. Lightning crawled through them. The forests on its back held entire ecosystems of monsters that jumped from branch to branch as if traveling on a moving continent. Damien called it the Eater. I called it Shelf Problem 1. Felix hated the name. Harper painted it on a missile. The Eater was 3 days from Phoenix. Inside Pocket City, that gave us almost a year of construction time if we pushed the workshop zones hard. People could not live at that pace without aging, so crews rotated. Machines did not need sleep. Captured monsters did not get a vote. We started by building the shelf. The Titan core powered industrial portals that moved material from across the region. I collected abandoned highway sections, quarry stone, steel bridges, rail lines, empty warehouses, and the remains of the ruined stadium. Harper fused them into a platform 20 miles long inside the empty zone beyond the farms. It was not a normal shelf. The top surface curved upward like a bowl. Portal anchors lined the rim. Cables thicker than buildings connected it to the Titan core. Owen installed turbines beneath the floor and momentum rails along the inner curve. Anything released into the bowl would be redirected toward the center. The Eater was too large for my widest portal, so we built a wider one. My portals normally formed glowing rectangles with stable edges. Portal anchors could hold those edges after I released them. Harper discovered that if she fused 2 anchors while both held active openings, the edges merged. The result cost more energy, but behaved like one larger door. We fused 4, then 16, then 100. A glowing square appeared above the shelf, large enough to swallow a neighborhood. The Titan core dimmed to a coal, still too small. We needed thousands of anchors, and every one required silvertree fibers, crystal conductors, and precise alignment. The factory produced them day and night. Mask-faced workers from the field joined Harper's crews, carrying beams and humming through their empty faces. The giant garden creature grew moss over every joint, preventing fractures. Felix trained. He hated construction, but he understood that striking the Eater's core would require crossing miles of monster-covered forest. I built him a portal course through Pocket City. Doors opened at random angles, gravity shifted, captured beasts attacked from pens, artillery fired foam blocks at his head. He failed the first run because Harper fused his shoelaces together. He failed the second because I connected one portal to the potato field. At the 100th run, Felix could enter a door sideways, reverse his lightning mid-jump, strike 5 targets, and land on a moving plane without burning the wings. He stopped calling me support. He started calling me a cheater. That was progress. Owen built the attack fleet. He had aircraft from 3 airports, but normal planes could not survive the Eater's storm wings, so we removed the need for them to fly normally. Each craft received a moving anchor. I could store it between lightning strikes, release it close to a target, then pull it back before gravity took over. We built gun platforms with no engines because portals moved them. We built cannons with barrels that ended inside the warehouse, allowing ammunition to travel through slow-time acceleration tracks before emerging. We built hollow missiles carrying captured monsters. We built drills made from crystal titan plates. Harper built something she called a folding bridge. It was 5 miles long. The entire bridge existed inside Pocket City in stacked sections. Each section could emerge from a portal fused to the previous section and extend through the air beneath Felix's feet. The moment he passed, the rear sections returned to storage and reappeared at the front. It was a bridge that moved by eating its own tail. I loved it. We launched the first attack one day before the Eater reached the city. I placed a marked coin on a high-altitude weather balloon. The balloon drifted near the creature's lower storm wing before being torn apart. The coin survived long enough to become my anchor. A portal opened above the desert. Felix stepped through onto the folding bridge. Harper followed on a construction platform. Owen remained in Pocket City, controlling the fleet through cameras. I stood at the center of the warehouse control grid with 24 doors open around me. The Eater noticed us immediately. Its forest moved. Thousands of creatures climbed to the edge and jumped. Some had wings. Others simply fell toward us with claws extended. The sky filled with monsters. I opened the shelf portal beneath them. The glowing opening was still only neighborhood-sized, but the front wave entered completely. Warehouse Authority froze flying beasts above the bowl. I sorted them by size while they hung in slow time. Small creatures went to pens. Large creatures went to launch tubes. Anything on fire went to the furnaces. The Eater opened its mouth. Wind pulled toward it with enough force to bend the folding bridge. Felix fused his spear into the walkway using a clamp Harper had built. Harper fused her platform to the bridge. I attached the rear section to a terrain anchor inside Pocket City. The Eater inhaled. The whole 5-mile bridge stretched toward its mouth. That was the plan. We let it swallow the front. The bridge stabbed between the creature's forest-covered teeth. Felix ran along it, lightning trailing behind him. As each section entered the mouth, I moved the rear section to the front. The bridge extended down the Eater's throat faster than it could pull us inward. Cameras on the bridge showed an entire world inside the creature. Its throat was a canyon lined with roots. Rivers of glowing energy flowed along the walls. Monsters lived on hanging platforms of bone. In the distance, a green sun pulsed behind layers of tissue. The core of Felix charged toward it. Then the Eater bit the bridge. Crystal teeth closed around 3 sections. Harper's fused joints held for 1 second. The metal screamed. Felix jumped forward as the bridge snapped behind him. I opened a portal beneath his feet. He entered Pocket City, crossed a momentum rail, and emerged deeper inside the throat. I repeated the process. Felix became a red spark skipping through the Eater's body. Parasites attacked each portal the moment it opened. Worms with human-sized mouths forced their way through. Because their whole bodies crossed, they entered my inventory. Warehouse Authority caught most. One burrowed into a portal anchor before I noticed. It vanished into the machinery and began chewing cables. Then another crossed, then hundreds. The Eater was not just swallowing our attack, it was invading through the bridge. Black vines erupted from the industrial portal rim. They wrapped anchors, drank energy, and widened the opening from the wrong side. Forest creatures poured into the shelf bowl. I tried to close the portal. The vines held it open. That had never happened before. The Eater's body contained enough spatial energy to resist my authority. It had consumed thousands of gates. My inventory was not special to it. It was food. The creature pulled harder. The giant portal began moving toward its mouth. Not physically, the connection itself shifted. The Eater was dragging Pocket City's entrance through space, trying to swallow the dimension behind it. For the first time, I felt my warehouse move. Buildings trembled. The distant ceiling lights flickered. The black door to the silver field bent inward. The farms tilted toward the portal. People slid across streets. Vehicles rolled. Captured monsters slammed into fences. The Eater was eating my inventory. Felix was still inside its throat. Harper was outside on the broken bridge. I could not simply cut the connection, so I fed it something worse. I released Damien. Not from containment. I moved his entire box onto a launch rail and opened a portal inside the Eater's throat. Warehouse authority fired the box like a bullet. Damien crossed deep into the creature. I accelerated his time for 3 seconds. He woke inside a transparent prison, surrounded by parasites and glowing roots. His black threads reacted instantly. They stabbed through the box's ventilation holes, entered the Eater's tissue, and connected to every dead thing it had swallowed. There were millions. Damien's eyes widened. I slowed him again before he could enjoy it. His threads remained active. Dead monsters embedded in the Eater's stomach walls began moving. Ancient bones pulled free. Half-digested giants stood in rivers of energy. Corpses from 100 nests clawed at the living island from inside. The Eater convulsed. Its pull weakened. I closed the industrial portal around the vines one anchor at a time. Incomplete plants were rejected and snapped backward. The bridge sections returned to storage. Parasites trapped inside Pocket City froze under my authority. Harper entered through the final opening. Felix did not. He had reached the green core. Through a camera on his jacket, I saw him standing on a bone platform above a sphere larger than the original stadium. Lightning gathered along his spear. The Eater's entire body tightened around him. Felix prepared to strike. Damien's threads reached the core first. Black lines spread across the green surface. The Eater stopped convulsing. Its storm wings changed direction. Every monster on its back turned toward Pocket City's closing portal. Damien had connected to the creature. I accelerated his time by accident when the control grid surged. He moved inside the box, pressed both hands against the walls, and smiled directly into the camera. He did not need to escape. He had found a bigger body. The living island's eye opened beneath its mouth. Black threads filled the green pupil. Damien spoke through every dead creature inside it. His voice shook my warehouse. He thanked me for the gift. Felix struck the core. Red lightning and black energy collided. The camera went white. The Eater's storm wings exploded outward, launching tornadoes across the desert. The shelf portal slammed shut. I lost contact with Felix. Outside, the living island turned away from Phoenix. For one hopeful second, I thought it was retreating. Then it rose higher. The waterfalls beneath it stopped falling. They reversed, flowing upward into its body. Every river, reservoir, and water tank for miles began lifting into the sky. Water formed silver streams climbing toward the Eater. The creature was draining the desert before attacking. Pocket City survived. The giant portal was damaged. Parasites infested the shelf machinery. Half our anchors had been destroyed. Felix remained trapped inside an enemy now partly controlled by Damien. Harper looked at the shrinking red spark on the camera feed. Owen asked for my next plan. I did not have one, so I opened every monster pen. The captured creatures stared at me from across Pocket City. Bulls scraped the floor. Winged beasts unfolded their claws. The giant garden creature hummed. Even the parasites froze in their containment pits. I changed their time zones to normal. Then I gave them guest authority over one thing. They could choose to leave. Portals opened toward the desert. Most monsters ran. Some attacked each other. A few remained. Lizard from the grocery store walked out of its pen, crossed the farm, and stopped beside me. It was now large enough to carry a truck on its back. Silver scales covered half its body. Glowing moss grew between the plates. The giant garden creature lowered its shell behind it. Winged predators gathered on the roofs. They were not tame. They were not my pets. They simply understood that the Eater would consume their world too. I had wanted an army inside my inventory. Now the army had volunteered. Harper climbed onto the garden creature's shell and began fusing artillery platforms into the moss. Owen rolled the portal fleet from the factory. I looked toward the living island, carrying Felix and Damien into the red sky. The first attack had failed. Good. Failure gave me information. The Eater could pull portals. It could invade through anchors. It could swallow dimensions. And it could control water. So the second attack would use no fixed portal, no open bridge, and no water. We were going to hit a flying island with a city-sized monster army launched through doors that existed for less than a heartbeat. And this time I was bringing the shelf to it. The second attack began with a sandstorm, not a natural one. I had spent weeks collecting desert terrain through terrain portals. Sand filled an empty warehouse zone in dunes taller than buildings. Owen installed turbines beneath the slopes. Harper fused Silvertree ribs through the sand so I could move the whole mass without losing control. When the Eater climbed above the clouds, I opened 24 doors around its left storm wing. Each portal existed for less than half a second. Sand fired through them at railgun speed. The storm wing swallowed millions of tons. Lightning struck the sand and turned it to glass. The entire rotating cloud became a spinning wheel of molten crystal. Eater tilted, burning glass rained across the forest on its back. Creatures scattered. Damien tried to redirect the wing, but controlling a storm full of liquid glass was like steering a blender after throwing in a building. That gave Owen an opening. Portal craft flickered across the sky. They did not fly from Pocket City to the Eater. They appeared for one heartbeat, fired and vanished. Cannons released crystal drills from above. Launch sleds threw Silvertree harpoons from below. Winged monsters crossed through side doors, attacked once, and returned before the Eater's parasites could invade. The sky became a war made of flashes. No front line, no safe direction. A cannon appeared beside the Eater's eye and fired into the forest. A bull emerged above a monster nest, landed horns first, then vanished before hitting the ground again. A giant garden creature crossed through a portal beneath the Eater, 6 legs spread wide, artillery platforms covering its shell. Harper stood on top, directing fire while Moss repaired the recoil damage. She had turned a peaceful walking garden into a battleship. The creature hummed happily. I rode the silver lizard. That was not necessary. I could have used a portal craft. But a man attacking a flying island from the back of a giant grocery store lizard is difficult to forget. We entered through a door above the Eater's forest. The lizard landed on trees, crushed a nest, and kept running. Its claws tore through roots. Glowing moss spread from its scales wherever it touched, tangling the Eater's plants. I opened portals in front of us, skipping across miles of terrain. We passed rivers flowing upward, crystal mountains, bone villages, and herds of monsters that had lived on the creature for generations. Damien's black threads covered everything. They ran along branches. They wrapped animals. They disappeared into the ground. The Eater resisted him, but he had enough dead tissue inside the island to force parts of the body to obey. I followed the thickest threads toward the core. Felix was alive. Every few seconds, red lightning flashed through the forest ahead. Whole sections of trees exploded. The Eater's surface rose and fell as it tried to crush him from below. Felix kept moving through internal tunnels, using the last marked portal coins on his belt to signal his position. He had been fighting alone for 6 outside hours. From his point of view, that was only 6 hours. From mine, it had been almost 2 years of preparation. I had not wasted them. Harper's folding bridge emerged from a portal above the Eater's nose. This version was not 5 miles long, it was 40. The bridge unfolded in a giant circle around the creature's head. Sections fused together in midair, forming a glowing portal ring large enough to surround the Eater's entire body. The shelf platform followed behind it, launched from Pocket City with stored momentum. 20 miles of steel, highway, crystal, and concrete appeared vertically in the sky. The Eater flew straight into the bowl. The impact bent mountains on its back. The shelf did not stop it. Momentum rails along the curve redirected the creature forward through the portal ring. Its cliff-like face crossed the glowing edge. The front mile of the Eater entered my warehouse. For the first time, part of the living island existed inside Pocket City. Warehouse authority touched it and failed. The body was incomplete. The rest remained outside. Black vines exploded across the shelf. Parasites poured from the mouth. Forests grew sideways along the bowl, trying to root into my dimension. That was expected. The shelf had been built as bait and battlefield. Flamethrowers opened beneath the forest. They burned captured fire breath from the reservoir battle. Factory saws rose from the platform. Monster pens opened. Bulls, lizards, winged beasts, and crystal drills attacked the invading tissue. The Eater tried to pull backward. The portal ring moved with it. Harper had fused the ring to rails along the shelf. The ring slid from the creature's head toward its tail like a giant bracelet. Every foot it passed moved another section of the Eater into storage. The shelf did not need to swallow the whole island at once. It needed to scan it. The Eater rolled in the sky. The shelf rolled with it. Pocket City's horizon spun. Buildings were safe because their gravity zones remained stable, but everything on the battle platform turned upside down. Water tanks floated from mounts. Captured sand fell toward the ceiling. The Titan core pulled against its cables. Owen kept the ring moving. 1 mile stored, 2, 5. Forests on the Eater's back entered Pocket City and immediately slowed. Monsters became trapped between time zones. Rivers rose into suspended arcs. Waterfalls froze in midair, hanging above the shelf like glass curtains. The creature realized it could not pull free, so it pushed forward. Its body accelerated through the ring, the warehouse filled with living terrain. Mountains crossed the threshold, storm bones entered, entire ecosystems slid onto the shelf. The ring raced toward the eater's tail. That was dangerous too. If the creature entered completely while Damien controlled the core, he would gain access to Pocket City with a body the size of a nation. I needed Damien separated before the final inch crossed. I drove the lizard into the eater's throat. The path Felix had taken was destroyed, but Damien's threads gave me a trail. I opened tiny portals beneath roots, dropped through chambers, and used the lizard's claws to tear through tissue. We reached a cavern filled with green light. Felix stood on the surface of the core. His red jacket was burned black. His spear had broken in half. Lightning covered his entire body, but one knee rested against the green surface. Black threads wrapped his arms and throat. Damien's containment box had shattered. He stood above Felix, one hand buried in the core. His other hand held the broken half of the spear. The eater's energy had restored his body. He looked younger, stronger, and much more annoying. He told me I had finally built a kingdom worth taking. I did not answer. I opened a portal above him and dropped the bakery oven. Damien caught it with black threads. I opened another portal beneath the oven. The appliance vanished from his grip, traveled through a momentum rail inside Pocket City, and emerged behind him at supersonic speed. The oven hit Damien in the back. He flew across the core, bounced once, and landed in a river of glowing energy. The door fell open. A tray of dinner rolls floated out. Felix tore the threads from his throat and asked why I still had that oven. I told him legends require symbols. Damien rose from the energy river with black fire covering his body. He swung the broken spear. Threads turned it into a whip long enough to cross the cavern. I opened a portal in front of the blade. The spear tip entered, emerged above Damien, and stabbed his shoulder. He cut the thread before I could redirect it again. Felix attacked from the other side. Damien controlled the core beneath us. Green walls rose. Rivers changed direction. The cavern folded around his body. Felix's lightning struck false surfaces. My portals opened into closing tissue. The eater was trying to crush all three of us while Damien used it as armor. Then the lizard bit the core. It had been eating glowing moss for years of warehouse time. Its silver teeth carried the same binding spores. Green moss spread across the eater's core from the bite. Damien's black threads reacted violently. The moss recognized them as roots again. It grew along every connection, linking Damien to the eater more tightly than he wanted. He tried to pull his hand from the core. It would not move. Felix understood. He drove the broken base of his spear through Damien's sleeve and into the core, pinning his other arm. Damien became fused to the creature. The portal ring outside passed the eater's second storm wing. Only the tail remained outside. Warehouse authority pressed harder against the stored body. The eater's movement slowed. The core dimmed. Damien's black fire weakened. He smiled anyway. Then he released every corpse inside the living island. The dead rose all at once. Millions of bones tore through tissue. Ancient beasts ripped free from stomach walls. Dead parasites flooded the core cavern. Black threads filled the air until I could not see Felix. Damien had been saving his full army for the moment he entered Pocket City. I had been saving mine too. I opened a portal inside the core. The other end faced the Titan power station. The captured crystal Titan's burning heart fired a beam through the door. Pure energy crossed dimensions and struck the eater's green core point blank. The cavern became daylight. Damien screamed. The moss burned. Felix disappeared inside red lightning. The lizard curled around me, silver scales turning white from heat. I opened a second portal beneath us and dropped all three of us into the silver field beyond the black door. We landed in the river. Mask-faced workers scattered. Silver trees bent away. The giant lizard hit the water, rolled, and released clouds of steam. Felix surfaced beside me. Damien did not. He remained fused to the eater's core. That was the point. The Titan beam did not destroy the core. It overloaded it. Every spatial organ inside the eater locked in one direction. Forward, outside, the living island surged through the portal ring. Its tail crossed. For one silent instant, the entire creature existed inside my inventory. Warehouse authority recognized one complete living body. I stopped time around it. The eater froze. Forests stopped burning. Rivers stopped flowing. Storm wings stopped turning. Millions of dead creatures stopped halfway through rising. Damien stopped inside the core, fused to a body he could no longer command. The 40-mile shelf settled beneath the captured island. Pocket City shook for 3 minutes. Then the largest monster on the continent became inventory. My level did not rise immediately. The eater was alive, not defeated. Capturing it gave me no kill reward, but warehouse authority expanded to contain what I had stored. The ceiling lights moved farther away. New floor appeared beneath the shelf. My control range stretched across the whole dimension. I could feel every tree on the creature's back, every river, every monster, every black thread. I separated Damien from the core by moving the matter around him. Moss, tissue, and crystal peeled apart in slow motion. He remained frozen until his full body became distinct. Then I placed him back inside a new box. This one was made from Eater crystal, Titan plates, silver wood, and the metal door of the bakery oven. Felix approved of the last part. We did not kill the Eater. Its body was too valuable. We created safe paths through the forests. We redirected rivers into the farms. We harvested storm energy from its wings. Owen converted the hollow bones into hangars. Harper fused cities to the creature's back. Mask-faced workers planted silver trees among its mountains. Pocket City was no longer only a warehouse city. It had a continent. The captured Eater became our sky district, even though there was no sky inside the inventory. I gave it a slow time zone while crews worked on the surface. Its mind remained asleep. Its parasites entered pens. Its monsters became part of the ecosystem. The lizard received an entire valley. I still did not say its name aloud. Felix received a new spear made from Eater crystal. He tested it by splitting a mountain on the creature's back. Harper shouted at him for damaging future housing. Owen received the Stormwing generators. He spent a week smiling at power readings. I received a new ability, inventory manifestation. Until then, everything moved through portals. Now, for 10 seconds, I could partially overlap a section of my inventory with the outside world. I did not need to drop a building through a door. I could make the building exist in both places at once. First test placed a warehouse road across a collapsed canyon. Vehicles drove over it. After 10 seconds, the road vanished back into storage, leaving every vehicle safely on the other side. The second test placed a farm above the city. For 10 seconds, Phoenix had a ceiling made of wheat. The third test happened by mistake. I overlapped the Eater's waterfall district with Owen's workshop. The workshop became a lake. Owen banned me from testing near machinery. Desert recovered. Water returned after we released the Eater's stored lakes. Monster gates stopped turning toward the sky. Settlements across the region celebrated. For a while, it felt like the largest battle was behind us. That is always when the next problem arrives underground. The first warning was a crack in the warehouse floor, not outside, inside Pocket City. The crack appeared beneath the original 10 shelves. It ran between them in a perfect line, split the concrete, and released warm golden light. My authority could not close it. The Titan core dimmed. The black door to the silver field opened wider by itself. The captured Eater's frozen eye moved. Then the endless warehouse floor began to rise. Something beneath my inventory pushed upward. Concrete bulged across miles. Farms tilted. Buildings slid. The shelf supporting the Eater lifted like a plate on boiling water. People ran toward safe zones. Harper fused foundations. Owen shut down the power grid. Felix stood beside the crack with his new spear, lightning ready. I looked through the golden opening. Far below, I saw stars. Not a sky, an ocean of stars beneath the floor. Shapes moved between them. Vast chains stretched through the darkness. Each chain was attached to the underside of one of my original 10 shelves. The shelves had never been empty furniture. They were anchors. And whatever they were holding down had just noticed the weight of my kingdom. The crack beneath my original shelves widened slowly. That was the only good thing about it. Golden light spread 1 inch at a time, which meant we had hours of Pocket City time to move people away. I shifted the safe zone onto the captured Eater's back. Harper fused entire neighborhoods to its mountains. Owen relocated the power grid into the creature's hollow storm bones. Farms rolled across the warehouse floor on terrain platforms and climbed onto the living island through manifestation overlaps. Pocket City evacuated onto its own continent. I moved the Titan core last. The moment it left the floor, the crack opened another mile. Concrete split with a sound like thunder slowed down. Chunks fell into the star ocean below and became tiny shadows. The chains attached to the 10 shelves pulled tight. Each shelf remained exactly where it had stood on my first day, surrounded by empty air as the floor collapsed around them. They were impossible anchors. Everything else in the warehouse obeyed my authority. The shelves did not. I tried moving one. The entire dimension shook. A chain beneath it rose from the stars. Each link was larger than a city block. Golden symbols covered the metal, but they were not messages. They were patterns, like the grain in wood or rings in a tree. Owen touched one and nearly collapsed. His ability showed him no machine. It showed tension, weight, and an age too large to understand. The chain was not holding something down. It was holding the warehouse up. Our endless floor was a platform suspended over a lower dimension. The 10 shelves were attachment points. Every building, river, monster, and mountain I stored added weight. The captured Eater had finally pushed the ancient structure beyond its balance. Nobody had designed a punishment for me. I had simply put a continent on a floor without checking the load limit. That felt fair. Felix looked into the star ocean and asked what would happen if the chains broke. I opened a small portal beneath a falling concrete slab, caught it, and dropped it back onto solid ground. Then I told him I did not plan to find out. Harper examined the shelf bases. Each one was plain steel above the floor, but below, the legs continued into golden chain mounts. She could not fuse anything directly to them. The same force that rejected her ability at the black door rejected it here. We needed to reduce the load. The obvious solution was to release the captured eater outside. That would save the warehouse and destroy whatever region received a living island full of monsters. I considered dropping it into the ocean. Then I remembered it controlled water and decided the ocean had suffered enough. We could release empty terrain, buildings, and supplies, but most of the weight came from living ecosystems and power cores. Pocket City depended on them. Even if we emptied everything, the damaged floor might continue collapsing. The crack had already become a hole, and something was climbing through it. A hand made of stars gripped the edge. It had too many fingers, each one a line of darkness filled with points of light. The shape pulled upward without disturbing the concrete. It passed through matter like a shadow, yet the chain nearest it went slack. Another hand appeared miles away. Then another. The star ocean was not water. It was a swarm. Countless flat creatures moved together beneath the warehouse, overlapping until they looked like one endless sky. Each creature resembled a piece of night cut into the shape of a hand, wing, or face. They climbed toward the warmth, light, and living energy above. When the first star hand crossed the edge, warehouse authority touched it. The creature ignored me. It was not stored. It belonged to the dimension beneath mine. It reached toward the nearest building. The wall vanished where its fingers passed, not broken, not eaten. The material simply lost color, weight, and existence. A clean handprint remained through steel and concrete. Felix struck it with lightning. The bolt disappeared inside the star shape. New stars lit across its palm. The creature grew larger. Energy fed it. Owen fired a normal bullet. The bullet passed through and fell into the hole. Harper threw a silver tree branch. The branch touched the creature and became gray dust. Our strongest attacks were either useless or food. I opened a portal in front of the star hand. It passed through. The complete creature entered a containment zone inside the same warehouse. Because the portal only connected 2 points in my dimension, authority still ignored it. The lower creatures were not guests. They were neighbors. More hands climbed from the hole. I manifested a section of the outside desert across the opening. For 10 seconds, solid earth occupied the same place as the crack. The star creatures moved through it without slowing. Felix asked whether I had any good news. I told him they could not move quickly. Then the first creature touched one of the original shelves. It disappeared. Not the creature, the shelf. One anchor vanished from the warehouse. The chain beneath it fell into the star ocean. The entire floor tilted. Pocket City's captured continent slid 100 feet before I stabilized its gravity zone. The black door to the silver field bent sideways. River water poured through the frame and fell into the abyss. 9 shelves remained. The star creatures were not climbing toward our energy. They were climbing toward the anchors. I created barriers, but their bodies passed through. I moved the shelves, but they resisted. I tried covering them with slow time zones. The creatures ignored time control the same way they ignored authority. Damien's containment box fell from the tilting shelf district. I caught it with a portal. A star hand crossed the opening at the same moment. Its fingers brushed the Eater crystal wall. The box lost one corner. Damien's frozen time zone broke. He moved. Black threads shot from the damaged container, caught the edge of the hole, and pulled him free. He landed beside the 8 remaining shelves as another star creature erased the 9th. For once, Damien did not attack me. He looked into the abyss. His face became serious. He knew what the creatures were. I accelerated his time enough to speak. Damien told me the lower dimension was called the Hollow Sea by gate explorers who had seen pieces of it. Star shapes appeared beneath old dungeons when spatial barriers became thin. They erased matter, absorbed energy, and moved toward stable anchors. No one knew whether they were animals or weather. He had never seen this many. I asked how to kill them. He said nobody had. Then he tried to throw me into the hole. I shifted gravity sideways and slammed him into a shelf. Felix pinned his coat with the Eater crystal spear. Harper fused the coat to a steel plate. Damien cut himself free, leaving half the fabric behind. 7 shelves remained. We did not have time for revenge. I offered Damien a choice: help us hold the warehouse up or fall with it. He asked what stopped him from escaping outside. I opened a portal showing the desert. Eater's old storm still covered the region. Monster gates pulsed. Settlements depended on Pocket City's supplies and portal roads. Damien could leave, but his monster control would not protect him from a dimensional collapse large enough to swallow every connected gate. He understood the warehouse was not isolated. It touched every inventory opening I had ever created. If the foundation fell into the hollow sea, the collapse might pull those marked points with it. He agreed to help for one reason. He lived in the same world. No promises, no bargains, just survival. I slowed him slightly, not enough to freeze him, but enough that Felix could react if he tried anything. Then we descended. Harper fused a platform around one of the remaining shelves. Owen installed Stormwing turbines beneath it. I opened portals above and below the platform, creating a controlled fall. The shelf remained fixed, but the platform moved down along its chain. Felix stood at the front. Damien stood at the rear with threads linked to captured flying corpses. Harper controlled the structure. Owen remained above, coordinating the evacuation. I rode the lizard again. The Silverfield's giant garden creature carried the portal generator on its shell, but it was too large for the platform. The lizard fit barely, which was good enough. We dropped beneath the warehouse floor. The underside of my inventory looked nothing like concrete. It was a vast black metal plate covered in shelves extending downward like roots. My original 10 shelves were only the visible tips. Beneath each one hung an inverted tower filled with empty compartments. Chains passed through the towers and continued into the hollow sea. The endless warehouse had depth I had only ever built across the surface. Below us waited enough storage structure to hold planets. Most of it was broken. Star creatures covered the underside. They crawled between inverted shelves, erasing sections. Every missing piece weakened the remaining chains. Golden light spilled from cracks in the metal. Damien sent corpse birds ahead. The creatures ignored dead flesh until black threads moved it. Then they turned toward the motion. They followed active energy, not life itself. That gave me an idea. I opened a portal to the Titan core and released a thin beam into empty space. Every star shape nearby changed direction. Chase the beam. I moved the portals slowly, drawing them away from the chain. The swarm followed like iron filings around a magnet. When I closed the opening, they spread out again. We could redirect them. We still could not kill them. The platform descended toward the point where the chains vanished into the hollow sea. The stars below were not distant lights. They were bodies layered by the billions. A solid surface of darkness waited beneath us, rising in waves. At the center, something large moved. The swarm separated around a shape wider than the captured eater. It resembled a whale skeleton made from empty space. Golden chains passed through its ribs and connected to a glowing structure on its back. The warehouse was chained to it. The giant creature carried my dimension through the hollow sea. It was not a prisoner. It was the foundation, and it was dying. Star creatures covered its bones. Every place they touched became thinner. The enormous carrier swam forward anyway, pulling the warehouse behind it through a dimension with no direction. 10 shelf chains distributed the load across its body. Losing anchors had concentrated the weight. The captured eater had not awakened the swarm. The swarm had been attacking for a long time. My added weight simply made the damage visible sooner. 5 chains remained. The carrier turned one empty eye toward us. Inside the darkness, I saw a small golden flame. It was asking for help without words. Damien raised his hands. Black threads moved toward the creature's bones. Felix placed the spear against his throat. Damien claimed he could control it after death. I told him it was not dead. He said that could be corrected. That was the moment our temporary teamwork ended. Damien released every corpse bird at once. They pulled his body from the platform. He flew toward the carrier's skull, threads spreading. Felix became lightning and chased him. Harper shouted that the 4th chain was failing. The platform tilted. The lizard dug claws into metal. Star creatures climbed from below. I could stop Damien or save the warehouse, so I did both badly. I opened a portal in front of Felix and redirected him above the carrier's skull. I opened another beneath Damien and dropped the bakery oven through. Damien dodged it this time. He had learned. The oven continued downward into the hollow sea. Every star creature turned toward it, not because of energy, because they remembered it. The oven had touched Damien, the Titan, the Eater, and dozens of portals. It carried layers of spatial marks. To the swarm, it shone brighter than a sun. The star creatures abandoned the chains. Billions of dark shapes flowed after the falling oven. For the first time, the carrier's bones became clear. The golden flame in its eye brightened. Harper looked at me. I looked at the disappearing appliance. Then the hollow sea swallowed my bakery oven. I felt its inventory mark continue downward, farther than my portal range, farther than any anchor. Yet the mark remained connected. The oven was not gone. It was falling toward somewhere. And the entire hollow sea was following it. The bakery oven fell through the hollow sea with billions of star creatures behind it. I could still feel its mark. That made no sense according to my old range. The oven was already hundreds of miles below the warehouse, if distance meant anything in that place, but it had crossed my portals so many times that part of my authority clung to it like grease. I reached for the mark. A doorway opened beneath the falling oven. The other end appeared above the carrier's tail. The oven vanished into the first portal and emerged from the second, still falling. It passed the carrier, crossed the hollow sea, and entered another door below. I sent it back above again. I created a loop. The swarm followed. Dark hands, wings, faces, and flat bodies poured through the portals after the oven. The stream wrapped around the carrier in a gigantic circle. Every lap pulled more star creatures away from the warehouse chains. Soon a black ring rotated through the abyss, chasing one battered appliance forever. Harper stared at the loop. She asked whether my final answer to a cosmic disaster was making it run in circles after kitchen equipment. I told her it had worked on the Titan. The carrier's golden eye brightened. It moved one enormous fin. The warehouse above shifted with it. The remaining chains groaned. The creature was still too weak to hold our weight, but the swarm had stopped feeding on its bones. We had time. Then Damien reached its skull. His corpse birds landed across the empty bone. Black threads entered cracks and spread toward the golden flame in the carrier's eye. Felix struck the threads with lightning, but every destroyed line split into more. Damien had learned from the eater. He no longer tried to control the whole creature at once. He was infecting small pieces, creating dead points inside living tissue. The carrier's head turned. One empty eye remained gold, the other filled with black threads. Damien's voice traveled through the bone. He said a world should have one driver. I hated the sentence so much I almost let Felix electrocute him. Instead, I opened a portal beside Damien's head and released the manager. He had been helping with evacuation when I stored a chunk of the security platform. I had not planned to use him. He simply happened to be wearing stone fists and yelling at the wrong moment. The manager emerged swinging. His stone-coated punch hit Damien in the jaw. Damien spun across the carrier's skull with a shocked expression. Felix stared at the manager. The manager stared into the endless star ocean and immediately jumped back through the portal. It was the best thing he had ever done. Damien recovered and sent corpse birds toward me. I moved the oven loop. The circular stream of star creatures followed its target. I rotated the portal exits and bent the black ring across the carrier's skull like a whip. The stream passed through the birds. They vanished. It passed across Damien's outer threads. The black lines disappeared without feeding the swarm enough energy to stop it. The star creatures wanted the oven's deeper spatial marks. Everything else was dust in their path. Damien pulled his remaining threads into the carrier's bone. I could not sweep the star stream through him without erasing part of the creature supporting my warehouse. Felix attacked directly. He moved across the skull in red flashes. Damien raised walls of controlled bone. Felix entered portals I opened between them, striking from above, below, and sideways. The broken landscape became a maze of lightning and black threads. Harper ignored the fight. She was saving everyone. The platform reached the carrier's spine. Harper fused ether crystal beams around the bones without touching them directly. The beams formed a harness. Silvertree fibers wrapped the harness. Cables rose toward the warehouse chains. She could not join material to the ancient anchor metal, so she built a hand around it. Owen lowered a chain from the captured eater's storm bones. It connected to the harness with an enormous locking jaw. A second followed, then a third. We were replacing the original 10 anchor points with thousands of smaller supports. The carrier moved again. The new harness held. Pocket City stopped tilting. The warehouse floor above remained broken, but the captured continent stabilized. People cheered through the communication system. Owen announced that the load had spread across 6 miles of the carrier's spine. Damien heard him. He abandoned Felix and drove every thread toward the harness. Black lines entered ether crystal, silver wood, steel, and cable. Damien did not need to control the carrier if he controlled the structure holding my kingdom. I closed the portal loop. The oven stopped falling. For one moment, the star swarm lost its target. The black ring spread outward. Then I opened a door directly in front of Damien. The bakery oven emerged. Damien flinched. The entire hollow sea turned toward him. Billions of star creatures changed direction. The black current rushed across the carrier's skull, through controlled bone walls and toward the oven. Damien stood between them. He tried to move. Felix drove the ether crystal spear through his shadow and pinned it to the bone. The weapon did not pierce Damien's body. It pinned the black threads beneath him, locking his control network in place. The star swarm arrived. I opened a portal around Damien at the final second. His complete body entered Pocket City. The swarm struck the bakery oven instead. The appliance disappeared beneath darkness. Spatial marks vanished one layer at a time. The oven had crossed thousands of portals, touched dimensional cores, carried monster energy, and survived battles that should have turned it into powder. The swarm consumed those marks like a feast. As each mark vanished, the star creatures changed. Their flat bodies gained depth. Hands became solid, wings thickened, empty faces developed shells. They were not destroyed, they were becoming matter. The oven's spatial history anchored them to my dimension. Warehouse authority touched the closest one. This time it responded. I froze it, then another, then 1,000. The swarm had entered the portal loop completely while chasing the oven. The loop crossed my warehouse and the hollow sea, turning the current into one connected structure. As the spatial marks gave the creatures physical form, they became storable. I expanded the shelf portal. The giant ring opened beneath the carrier, not to swallow the carrier, to swallow the current. Black river of star creatures poured through. Warehouse authority separated the newly solid bodies into time zones. Owen redirected empty shelf towers beneath the floor. Harper opened containment channels along the rebuilt harness. We stored the hollow sea one wave at a time. Number was impossible. Millions entered, then billions. Each creature became a dark tile no thicker than a hand. I stacked them in inverted shelves beneath the warehouse, restoring the structure they had erased, empty compartments filled with pieces of night. More we stored, the lighter the pressure on the carrier became. The star ocean lowered. Golden chains rose from the darkness. Some attached themselves to the rebuilt harness without help, as if the dimension recognized a stronger foundation. Damien fought inside Pocket City. I had stored his complete body, but his threads still connected to the carrier through the open shelf portal. He moved against warehouse authority, dragging himself across the containment zone. The Eater crystal box had broken. He tore through steel barriers and headed toward the Titan core. He wanted enough energy to resist me again. I shifted the city around him. Roads moved, buildings separated, gravity turned. Damien ran up one wall, jumped across a gap, and used threads to pull himself through a farm. Crops turned black behind him. Felix entered through a portal and chased him. Harper remained below. Owen remained at the controls. The final fight belonged to me. Damien reached the Titan power station. The captured core burned behind crystal walls. He drove threads through the containment shell. Black energy spread over the golden fire. I did not stop him. I opened the station gates. Damien laughed and absorbed the power. His level rose. His body expanded beneath black light. Threads filled the district. Captured monsters in nearby zones woke and pulled against their pens. He believed I had made another mistake. I had not moved the real Titan core. What burned inside the station was a manifestation. For 10 seconds, the core existed in two places. The real one remained on the carrier harness, powering our new anchor grid. The overlapping image inside Pocket City had all the energy, heat, and physical presence of the original, but only while my skill remained active. Damien absorbed a temporary object. The 10 seconds ended. The manifested core vanished. So did every piece of energy connected only to it. Black power left Damien's body at once. His threads collapsed. His expanded form shrank. He fell to one knee. Felix arrived with his spear ready. I opened a portal beneath Damien. He dropped into the original shelf district. Only one of the first 10 shelves remained standing above the repaired floor. I had moved the others into the anchor system after learning how. The last shelf held a single can of beans. The first item I had ever stored. Damien landed beside it. Warehouse authority pressed down. He tried to release a thread. I changed the time zone around his fingers. His hands slowed. I changed the zone around his feet. His body froze from the ground upward. I did not stop his mind. I wanted him to understand. I moved the remaining shelf. For the first time, it obeyed. The repaired harness had freed the original anchor. I tilted the shelf over Damien. 10 empty levels of steel dropped around him like a cage. Harper fused the frame shut from a portal. I placed the can of beans on top. Then I lowered the entire shelf into the deepest inverted storage tower beneath Pocket City. Damien disappeared into darkness. No dramatic death. No final speech. He became one stored enemy among billions of objects, exactly where he belonged. The star swarm continued entering the warehouse until the oven's last spatial mark faded. The appliance finally appeared inside my control zone, stripped clean and shining like new metal. It landed on the floor with a soft clang. The star creatures stopped chasing. Those remaining in the hollow sea drifted away from the carrier. Without the dense swarm, the lower dimension became quiet. Golden shapes moved far below, too distant to threaten us. The carrier's eye burned bright. Its body rose. The rebuilt harness lifted the warehouse foundation. Chains tightened across thousands of points. Pocket City leveled. The cracked floor sealed where Harper had fused replacement plates. The black door returned to its normal shape. My inventory did not expand because of a level reward. It expanded because the carrier was healthy enough to move again. Inverted shelf towers lit one after another beneath us. Levels unfolded downward into the dark. New storage districts appeared, each larger than the city above. The solidified star creatures formed walls, floors, and cold zones where energy disappeared. We had turned the thing eating our dimension into construction material. My ability screen changed. Warehouse authority, sovereign. Word made Felix laugh because I had spent months refusing every royal nickname people invented. I told him it described ownership, not a crown. He said that sounded exactly like something a king would say. I opened a portal under him. He avoided the potato field this time. He had improved. The warehouse was safe. Damien was contained. The carrier survived. For 1 minute, I allowed myself to believe we were finished. Then Owen contacted me from the surface. Every portal anchor outside Pocket City had activated at once, not because my ability changed. Because something on Earth was opening all of them from the other side. I looked through a camera above Phoenix. The desert was covered in monsters. Not one horde, hundreds. While we fought beneath the warehouse, gates across the region had released everything inside them. The Eater had once kept those nests apart by consuming their energy. With it gone, smaller apex creatures had expanded into the empty territory. Now they were converging on Phoenix, drawn by the Titan energy, the restored rivers, and the thousands of survivors using my portal roads. The city had become the richest feeding ground in the desert. Felix appeared beside me, spear over one shoulder. Harper returned from the carrier harness covered in grease and silver moss. Owen brought the attack grid online. I looked across Pocket City. Farms covered the captured continent, factories filled the shelf districts, monster pens stretched for miles, artillery platforms hung from eater bones, portal craft waited on launch rails. Billions of solid star tiles formed new armorless fortifications that erased incoming energy. The giant garden creature carried enough weapons to flatten a mountain. The lizard stood in its valley, silver scales glowing. Everyone had once mocked me for receiving extra inventory space. Now an entire kingdom waited inside it. I opened the largest door I had ever created above Phoenix. This time, I was not bringing people into shelter. I was taking the shelter to war. The largest door I had ever created covered the sky from one side of Phoenix to the other. People looked up and saw Pocket City. Not a dark hole, not a menu. A real world hung above them. Roads crossed endless white space. Towers rose from silver forests. Farms stretched along the back of a sleeping living island. Stormwing generators turned around a captured sun. Factories glowed beneath bridges. Monsters stood in launch pens beside machines that should never have existed. Then I lowered the kingdom. Inventory manifestations spread across the city for 10 seconds. Pocket City's main highway overlapped the ruined freeway. Silvertree bridges appeared across collapsed streets. Star-tile walls rose around shelters. Artillery towers occupied rooftops without crushing them because they still rested on warehouse foundations. The captured Eater's shadow covered downtown as part of its continent became real above Earth. For 10 seconds, Phoenix and my inventory became the same place. Everyone crossed. Survivors moved behind star walls. Portal craft launched from roads hanging in the sky. Owen's artillery fired from Pocket City directly into the desert. Harper's construction teams fused bridge anchors to real buildings before the overlap ended. Then the kingdom vanished upward. It left behind roads, walls, weapons, and an army. The first monster horde reached the city from the west. It was a moving carpet of insects, each one the size of a dog. They covered the desert from horizon to horizon. Their shells reflected sunlight in green waves. Behind them walked taller creatures carrying nests on their backs. The nests launched clouds of stinging larvae. Normal walls would have lasted seconds. I gave them no walls. I opened terrain portals beneath the front mile of insects. The desert disappeared. Millions of creatures fell into a trench that had not existed one heartbeat earlier. Before they reached the bottom, I opened exits above the back of their own horde. The front line fell onto the rear line. The insect wave became a pile. Owen fired portal artillery into the center. The cannons remained inside Pocket City. Only the barrels appeared around the target, blinking between shots. Crystal rounds entered from every angle. Explosions lifted insects by the thousands. Nest carriers opened their backs and released more larvae. I manifested the silver forest over the swarm. For 10 seconds, living trees occupied the desert. Their roots tangled insect legs. Their finger branches grabbed flying larvae. Mask-faced workers stood safely in Pocket City and beat drums, causing the silver trees to bend in rhythm. When the manifestation ended, the trees returned to storage. The insects trapped in their branches came with them, because their complete bodies overlapped the inventory zone. My warehouse gained 6 million angry bugs. I assigned them to a frozen time district and decided to solve that problem later. The second horde came from the north. Massive birds flew inside a rotating cloud of ice. Their wings produced blades of cold air that cut towers and froze roads. At the center flew an eyeless white creature with 6 wings and a chest full of blue flame. Felix wanted it. He rode the folding bridge into the sky while I moved it beneath him. The bridge extended from portal to portal, curving through the storm. Ice birds attacked. Felix cut them with red lightning. Every strike turned ice to steam, which froze again around him. I opened a door to the captured eater's storm wing. Warm hurricane air blasted into the ice cloud. The weather systems collided. Fog covered half the sky. Felix vanished inside it. The 6-winged creature fired blue flame through the clouds. I caught the beam with a star-tile funnel. The solidified hollow sea material erased energy without absorbing it. Blue fire disappeared along the walls and emerged as nothing. The creature fired again. I moved the funnel. Its own beam carved a clean tunnel through the fog, revealing its position. Felix crossed the distance in one red line. His eater crystal spear entered the creature's chest. I opened a portal behind the core and pulled the spear tip through. Felix stabbed from the front and the back at the same time. Lightning closed into a loop through the monster's body. The 6-winged creature fell. I opened a door beneath it and stored it before impact. Felix dropped toward the city with no bridge below him. I waited until he looked worried. Then I manifested the potato field under his feet. He landed in the crops for the 3rd time. Harper had added a larger sign. The 3rd horde came from below. The ground split along the eastern suburbs. Worms made from red stone burst upward, each one wider than a house. They did not attack people. They attacked portal anchors. Their mouths closed around the marked structures and chewed through spatial energy, cutting roads back to Pocket City. The temporary bridges flickered. Artillery towers lost connection. Shelters became isolated. Owen warned me that if enough anchors vanished, I would lose the city map and be forced back to visual range. Worms were not a random threat. They had lived beneath old gates, feeding on leftover spatial energy. My network was the largest meal they had ever found. I needed to remove every anchor before they ate it, so I stored the streets. One block at a time, marked intersections vanished into Pocket City. Asphalt, signs, sidewalks, empty cars, and anchor frames dropped onto warehouse terrain platforms. The worms followed, rising through the ground to bite the disappearing marks. I moved the portals under them. Complete bodies crossed. Warehouse authority caught the first worm, then the second. Third twisted halfway through and locked its stone jaws around the portal edge. It pulled backward, tearing open the ground. More worms wrapped around its body from below. They became one living chain connected through the earth. I could not store the front worm until the entire chain crossed or separated. Harper arrived on the giant garden creature. Artillery covered its shell. Silver moss grew beneath its feet. It landed beside the portal and hummed at the stone worms. The worms stopped pulling. They turned toward the glowing moss. They were not eating spatial energy for power. They were eating minerals carried by the anchors. The eater crystal and silver wood were richer than normal stone. Harper scraped a line of moss across the ground. The worms followed it. She led the entire chain away from the city like someone walking impossible pets. I opened terrain doors ahead of them, creating a path into an empty canyon zone inside Pocket City. One by one, the worms crossed willingly. I closed the portal behind the final tail. Harper planted silver trees across the canyon. The worms began tunneling through the mineral roots, aerating the soil and producing red crystal dust. The threat became a mining district before lunch. That was when people finally stopped asking whether every monster needed to die. Most did. Some just needed a job. The western insect horde broke through its own pile. The northern ice flock regrouped. More monsters approached from the south. Phoenix became the center of 4 moving battlefields. I fought all of them at once. 24 portals opened around me, but the new anchor grid multiplied them across Owen's machines. Every artillery frame held a door for 3 seconds. Every marked vehicle created a moving point. Every Silvertree tower passed my authority through its roots. I was no longer standing in one place controlling nearby openings. I was the road network. Bull charged a shelter. I rotated the street beneath it into storage and released the animal above an insect nest carrier. An ice bird dived toward a bridge. I opened a door to the Titan station and fired a beam past its wing. It turned, entered another portal, and struck a burrowing worm outside the mining canyon. A burning cat-shaped monster leaped over a star wall. I manifested the Eater's River in front of it. Water existed for 10 seconds, caught the creature, then returned to storage with the monster inside. A tower-sized insect raised its front legs over downtown. I dropped the old stadium scoreboard from above, caught it below, accelerated it through the warehouse, and hit the creature from underneath with the same object. The scoreboard still displayed the smiling hot dog, Harper built during the battle. She fused portal anchors onto flying monsters, turning enemies into moving doors. She joined broken highways into spirals that redirected charges. She attached ether crystal conductors to Felix's bridge, letting his lightning travel ahead of him and strike around corners. Owen conducted the machines. His launch rails fired trucks, drills, frozen lakes, boulders, and one empty house. Portal craft appeared inside monster formations, released wind cannons, and vanished. Stormwing turbines powered everything from the safety of Pocket City. Felix became the spear point. He moved through my doors without asking where they led. I opened one beneath his left foot and he jumped. He entered upside down and attacked sideways. He trusted my angles. I trusted his ability to survive them. We stopped fighting like separate people. Pocket City itself became one enormous weapon. The hordes weakened. Then the ground at the center of Phoenix opened. Every remaining monster stopped moving. Insects flattened themselves. Icebirds landed. Fire creatures lowered their heads. Burrowing worms inside the mining canyon pressed against the walls. A circular mouth rose from beneath downtown. It had no head, no eyes, and no body visible above the surface. Rings of teeth rotated inside a hole wider than the old stadium. The mouth opened around the base of the tallest remaining tower and swallowed it without chewing. Below the teeth, a vertical tunnel of flesh descended farther than my cameras could see. The smaller apex creatures had not converged on Phoenix to feed. They had been running from that. The buried creature released a pulse. Every monster gate in the region widened. The pulse did not command the gates. It resonated with them the way a deep sound can shake windows. Spatial energy poured toward the mouth. My anchor network bent. Portal frames tore from walls. The giant door above Pocket City stretched downward. The creature fed on openings. It had spent years beneath the desert, growing around the roots of gates. The eater's presence had kept it dormant by consuming the same energy. With the living island gone, the buried mouth woke hungry. Its first bite took 3 city blocks. Its second bite took half my anchor network. I closed every outside portal. The sky door vanished. Artillery disappeared. Bridges flickered. Felix dropped from the air and landed on a real rooftop for once. Harper's garden battleship remained outside, cut off from Pocket City. Owen lost all camera feeds. The mouth continued opening. Without portals, my army was only machines and monsters stranded across the city. People looked toward me. The same kind of people who had once laughed because I could carry extra beans. They were not laughing now. They were waiting. I placed one hand on the ground. The buried creature was too large to see. I could not force its whole body through an opening without knowing where the body ended. I could not use marked anchors because it ate them. I could not manifest Pocket City because the spatial overlap would feed it. So I used the one kind of inventory opening it could not swallow, the black door. The black door inside my warehouse was not created by my skill. It connected Pocket City to the silver field as a permanent physical passage. No glowing edge, no anchor, no active spatial energy. The buried mouth could not sense it from Earth. I needed to bring the creature to the door. That required bringing the desert into my warehouse without using a portal near its mouth. I opened terrain doors 100 miles away. The mouth did not react. It was focused on Phoenix. I began storing a ring of desert around the entire region. Sand, rock, dry riverbeds, abandoned roads, and deep layers of earth entered Pocket City in giant curved sections. From above, nothing changed near the city. From below, the creature's world disappeared. I removed terrain beneath its outer body 1 mile at a time, working inward from beyond its detection range. The stored sections revealed pale flesh stretching beneath the desert like roots. The creature was not one worm. It was a circular network of mouths connected around a central stomach. It covered nearly 50 miles. I stored the terrain around it, under it, and above every buried branch without touching the living tissue. The complete animal remained on Earth, suspended inside a hollow shell of remaining ground. The shell began to crack. The creature sensed the missing weight. Its mouths opened across the desert. Sinkholes formed. Roads collapsed. The central mouth turned toward the distant terrain portals. I closed them. Then I released the stored desert through the black door. Harper had moved the Silverfield's mask-faced workers away. The river was redirected. The doorway stood open to an empty valley. Terrain emerged physically across the threshold because I carried it from the warehouse side. Mile after mile of desert slid into the silver world. I rebuilt the same ring around the same creature, but on the other side of the door. For the buried animal, nothing changed at first. Its body remained surrounded by familiar sand and rock. But section by section, earth vanished from around it and reappeared beyond the black door. I was not forcing the monster through an inventory portal. I was moving the planet around it until the only place left to stand was inside my dimension. The central mouth realized the trap. It surged upward. Downtown Phoenix exploded. A white body rose beneath the rotating teeth. Rings of mouths opened along its sides. The The creature pulled itself from the ground, tearing through the last shell of earth. Felix attacked from one rooftop. Harper's garden creature fired from another. Every stranded weapon hit the exposed flesh. The monster ignored them and lunged toward the nearest active portal mark on my body. I ran straight at it. That confused everyone. The mouth opened wider than the street. Teeth rotated. Space bent around them. My inventory mark pulled forward like metal toward a magnet. At the final step, I opened no portal. I entered the stored front door of an ordinary city bus. The bus sat half-overlapped with the desert terrain I had moved through the black passage. Harper had fused its rear exit directly to a tunnel leading into the silver field. No ability, no glow, just physical construction crossing the threshold. I ran through the bus. The monster followed my mark. Its central mouth swallowed the vehicle whole. The bus slid through the tunnel. The mouth entered the black doorway. One section of the monster crossed, then another. Its buried roots tore free from the remaining earth shell and followed through the moved desert. The circular body squeezed into the silver valley, chasing me across terrain that felt identical to home. I reached the far side and jumped into Pocket City through the open black door. The final route crossed behind me. The creature's entire body entered my inventory dimension through a physical entrance. Warehouse Authority recognized it. I stopped time. The rotating mouths froze inches from closing around the black door. Sand hung in the air, teeth stopped. The creature's enormous body curved through 50 miles of silver valley and stored desert, complete from first mouth to final root. I moved it. Whole monster rose from the ground like a white ring. My authority rotated it, folded its root network inward, and lowered it into a containment trench built from solid star tiles. Those tiles erased the spatial energy it tried to absorb. The gate-eating creature became powerless. Outside, the central sinkhole stopped growing. The remaining hordes lost their fear. Then they remembered we were still there. I reopened Pocket City. This time, every door in the sky faced downward. The kingdom fired. When Pocket City returned, it did not appear as one door. It appeared as 10,000. Every anchor Owen had saved came online at once. Portal frames lit across rooftops, roads, aircraft, bridges, and monster platforms. Tiny openings covered the sky like stars. Larger gates formed rings around the remaining hordes. Terrain portals reopened beneath their feet. And the kingdom fired. Crystal artillery struck the insect swarms from above. Wind cannons hit from below. Frozen air crossed hot furnace exhaust and created spinning columns that lifted monsters into the sky. Silvertree harpoons pinned nest carriers together. Portal craft flickered through the chaos, releasing bulls, lizards, and drill missiles. The Eater's storm wing manifested above the northern ice flock. For 10 seconds, a hurricane larger than the city became real. It caught the birds, stripped away their cold cloud, and rotated the entire formation into a tight spiral. When the manifestation ended, I opened one portal beneath the spiral and stored thousands at once. Felix ran along the folding bridge through the western swarm. I extended the bridge faster than he could move. Every step opened doors beneath him. He stabbed once, and the spear point emerged through 50 smaller portals around the battlefield. One attack struck 50 targets. Red lightning connected them into a glowing web. He jumped. I rotated the web. The connected monsters flew around him like sparks from a wheel, smashing into the larger nest carriers. Felix landed on the final creature's back, drove his spear down, and split the shell. Harper arrived on the garden battleship. The peaceful giant had artillery on its shell, silver trees along its sides, and the lizard standing on top like a captain. Harper fused portal frames to the creature's moving moss. Cannons fired through them. The giant hummed and stepped across the battlefield, growing healing plants in every footprint. Injured survivors crawled into the moss. It sealed wounds and formed protective bulbs around them. The creature was not a healer companion or a gentle little mascot. It was a walking ecosystem carrying enough guns to erase a horizon. The silver lizard jumped from its back. It landed in the center of the southern fire horde. Years of warehouse growth had turned it into a dragon without wings. Its scales reflected flame. Moss released freezing blue sap along its spine. It bit the largest fire creature, lifted it, and threw it through one of my portals. The creature emerged above the insect swarm. Fire rained. The lizard looked toward me across the battlefield. I finally said the name aloud. The silver lizard roared. I had still never given it a real name. That did not stop Harper from shouting several terrible suggestions through the communication system. Felix repeated the worst one. Owen saved the recording. Some victories have a cost. The smaller hordes broke. Insects scattered into the desert. Ice birds fled north. Fire creatures buried themselves beneath cooling sand. I did not chase everything. A region needed predators, even ridiculous ones. I closed the paths towards settlements and left escape routes into empty territory. The strongest monsters refused to flee. 5 enormous shapes remained around Phoenix. A beetle with a shell shaped like a fortress stood in the west. A burning feline creature paced in the south, each paw print becoming glass. An ice bird circled in the north with wings spanning several blocks. A red stone worm rose in the east. Above them all floated a jellyfish made from storm clouds, its tentacles touching the ground like tornadoes. They had ruled separate nests before the buried mouth drove them together. Now each one saw the weakened city as territory. Felix wanted the ice bird. Harper wanted the beetle shell. Owen wanted the storm jellyfish for power generation. I wanted all 5 arranged by size. The beetle charged first. Shell deflected artillery. Star-tile rounds erased energy along the surface, but could not break the physical plates. Harper flew the folding bridge beneath its legs and fused sections around its joints. The beetle dragged the bridge through buildings. I opened a portal in front of one horn. The horn entered, emerged behind the other horn, and locked them together. The beetle tried to pull apart. Its own strength twisted its head sideways. Harper fused the horn tips. The creature became stuck looking left. I manifested a section of the silver forest around it. Trees grabbed its legs. Mask-faced workers beat faster drums. Branches bent together and rolled the beetle onto its back. Its complete body entered an overhead terrain portal. I stored it upside down. Burning feline attacked while everyone watched the beetle vanish. It crossed 5 miles in a single leap and landed on the garden battleship. Fire covered the giant's moss. Artillery melted. Harper fell from the shell. I opened a portal beneath her. She entered Pocket City, crossed a mattress slide Owen had kept from the old rescue system, and emerged on a rooftop. The burning creature bit into the garden giant's neck. The giant hummed, not in pain, in irritation. Glowing moss flooded the feline's mouth. Blue sap touched fire. Steam exploded from between its teeth. The creature staggered backward, coughing plants. The silver lizard hit it from the side. The 2 monsters rolled across the shell, fire and silver scales flashing. I opened portals around their fight, redirecting every missed attack toward the ice bird. Claws entered one doorway and struck feathers through another. Fire breath crossed the city and melted one wing. The silver lizard's tail hit the red stone worm in the face. I turned one duel into 3. Felix used the chaos. He ran along the ice bird's damaged wing, spear cutting through frozen feathers. The creature rolled in the air. I rotated gravity inside the nearby portal field, so Felix continued running along the underside. He reached the back, jumped through a door, and emerged above the storm jellyfish. Lightning entered the cloud body. Normally, that would have strengthened it. Owen opened turbine portals around the jellyfish at the same time. The creature's charged wind entered Pocket City's generators. Lightning flowed through Stormwing coils, into the Titan grid, and across the shelf districts. The jellyfish became a power plant before we captured it. Tried to pull free. Owen increased the load. Factory lights turned on across miles. Portal rails accelerated. The creature's cloud body thinned as electricity drained away. Felix fell through the center. I caught him, accelerated him along a momentum rail, and fired him back upward like ammunition. He struck the jellyfish from below. The Eater Crystal Spear split the central organ. The cloud collapsed inward. I opened a cylindrical portal around the complete body and stored the storm. It continued raining inside a containment tank for 3 warehouse months. The red stone worm attacked next. A tunnel beneath Harper's rooftop rose through the building and swallowed 3 floors. Harper avoided the teeth by fusing herself to a window frame. The worm shook the structure. She hung sideways over its mouth. I removed the building. Every wall, floor, window, and elevator dropped into Pocket City in separate complete sections. Harper entered with the window. The worm remained outside, suddenly biting empty air. Then I released the building above it. The floors landed in reverse order. The roof hit first, then the upper floors, then the foundation. The worm became buried inside an upside-down office tower. Harper fused the sections together around its body. I opened a portal beneath the entire structure and stored my first monster already packaged for shipping. That left the ice bird and the burning feline. Felix landed on the bird's head. The silver lizard stood on the feline's back. Both monsters charged in opposite directions across the city. I placed 2 portals ahead of them. The ice bird entered the first. The burning feline entered the second. They emerged facing each other. Ice and fire collided. The explosion created a mushroom cloud of steam. Felix and the silver lizard flew from the center. I caught Felix with a road manifestation. The silver lizard needed no help. The lizard landed on the side of a tower, ran down it, and jumped back into the fog. I could not see either apex creature, so I stored the fog. Terrain portal opened around the entire steam cloud. Air, water vapor, broken pavement, and both complete monsters entered Pocket City. Warehouse authority separated them in slow motion. I placed the ice bird in a cold district and the burning feline beside the furnaces. The battlefield went quiet. 5 apex creatures captured. Hundreds of hordes scattered or stored. One buried gate-eater contained beyond the black door. Phoenix remained damaged, but alive. My level rose after the final captures registered, not one level, 30. Power rushed through me so fast that every portal in the city flashed. Warehouse lights brightened. The carrier beneath Pocket City turned in the hollow sea. The captured eaters' storm wings started moving inside their time zone. New shelf districts unfolded. I reached level 81. Inventory manifestation increased from 10 seconds to 1 minute. My portal count no longer had a clear limit. It depended on available power, anchors, and concentration. My marked range expanded across the entire region, and one new ability appeared: Kingdom Deployment. I could choose one connected area of Pocket City and make it fully real outside for up to an hour. Not an overlap, not a portal, a temporary relocation of land, buildings, machines, and willing living guests. I tested it immediately. A section of Pocket City appeared over downtown Phoenix, not above it, around it. Silvertree streets connected broken roads. Farm terraces filled empty lots. Star-tile walls became foundations. A river crossed the sinkhole and poured into damaged canals. The captured Eaters Mountain District rose beyond the skyline, supporting artillery towers that were finally silent. People walked from ruined shelters into real homes without crossing a door. For 1 hour, my kingdom repaired the city. Harper used the time to fuse permanent bridges. Owen restored power through Titan conductors. Workers moved supplies. The garden giant crossed downtown, growing moss over cracked structures. The silver lizard slept in a stadium-sized crater and frightened anyone who approached. When the hour ended, most of Pocket City returned to storage. The repairs remained. The water remained. The people who chose to stay outside remained. Phoenix had walls, farms, power, and roads again. Manager found me near the place where the grocery store used to stand. He no longer coated his fists in stone and less fighting. He looked older. We had both lived years inside time zones, even though less than 1 year had passed outside. He admitted he had been wrong about my ability. I told him the pudding cups were still mine. That was enough forgiveness for 1 day. Felix arrived carrying his spear. He had reached level 79 after the battle, which meant he remained 2 levels below me. He stared at our screens for a long time. Then he said support abilities were unfair. I asked whether that was his way of calling me stronger. He said no. Harper played Owen's recording of Felix screaming when the potato field caught him. Felix left. That was also enough. Pocket City changed after the battle. He no longer treated it as a shelter waiting for Earth to become safe. It was a moving home connected to the world by roads I could open anywhere. Some people lived inside full-time. Others moved between settlements. Factories produced tools, vehicles, and portal frames. Farms fed regions that had lost crops. Captured monsters became power sources, workers, research subjects, or extremely dangerous decorations. Beetle's shell turned into a mobile fortress without anyone wearing armor. The icebird cooled food warehouses. The storm jellyfish powered an entire shelf district. The red worm expanded the mines. Burning felines slept beside the furnaces and bit anyone who carried water. Buried Gate-Eater remained frozen in the Silver Valley. Its rotating teeth became a research site. Star tiles lined the trench. Mask-faced workers planted silver trees along its roots. The giant garden creature visited sometimes and grew moss on its outer skin. I did not know whether we would ever wake it. I knew better than to waste useful monsters. Damien remained beneath the original shelf district. I visited once. The shelf cage stood inside a time zone where 1 second passed every 100 outside years. The can of beans remained on top. Damien's eyes were half open. One black thread extended from his finger, no farther than an inch. I placed the clean bakery oven beside the cage. It felt appropriate. Then I left him in the dark. For the first time since the sky cracked, nobody mocked my inventory. People looked toward empty air whenever danger appeared, hoping one of my doors would open. Monster nests moved away from marked roads. Settlements built landing zones for portal bridges. Children inside Pocket City raced toy carts around the original 10-shelf monument and argued over whether the scoreboard or the oven had defeated more giants. The correct answer was the oven. I had gone from carrying canned food to carrying cities. I had gone from hiding during monster waves to storing the waves. I had built farms in slowed time, factories under a living continent, monster pens beside neighborhoods, artillery inside storm bones, and roads that could cross the world without touching the ground. Everyone received inventory slots. I built a kingdom inside mine. That should have been the end. It was the end of the crisis, at least. Phoenix survived. The gates in the region stabilized. The hollow sea swarm became part of my warehouse foundation. The carrier recovered and continued swimming beneath us. Pocket City had enough food, power, and space to last for generations. I even went 3 full days without dropping a building on anyone. Then the bakery oven rang. It had no power cable. It had no clock. It had been stripped clean by creatures that ate spatial history. Yet somewhere beneath Pocket City, beside Damien's frozen shelf, its timer chimed once. I opened a coin-sized portal and looked through. The oven door stood open. Inside was not an empty metal box. Inside was a coastline under a violet sky. Waves rolled across black sand. Giant footprints led from the water toward distant lights. A rusted sign lay half-buried near the opening, covered in writing I could not read. The view did not resemble the silver field, earth, or the hollow sea. The star swarm had not erased every mark on the oven. It had uncovered the oldest one. Something on the distant coast turned toward the open door. I closed the oven. Harper asked what I had seen. Owen checked the power grid. Felix arrived because he had felt the spatial pulse from across the city. Even the silver lizard lifted its head in the valley. I looked across Pocket City. Factories were running, the farms were full, the army was stronger than ever. A captured continent rested on the 40-mile shelf. The carrier moved steadily beneath us. For once, no emergency forced my hand. I could seal the oven in slow time and forget it. That would have been safe. I had never built anything interesting by choosing safe. I moved the oven into the center of the original shelf district. Harper began measuring it. Owen brought cameras. Felix rested his spear against one shoulder and pretended he had not come because he was curious. I opened the door again. The violet coastline remained. Far away, a shape the size of a mountain walked between the lights. I smiled. My inventory still had room.